Right, and that's kind of what we're talking about.
Which is what cryptocurrency is, to be honest. I love the idea of it, but it has no physical backing.
It has the same problems that the American dollar does. That its value is derived specifically from what someone is willing to pay for it at that time.
I'm going to probably say fuck China a lot during this podcast, so I'm just going to preface this right now. When I say fuck China, I mean fuck the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party.
And none of us want to kill ourselves, so if anything weird happens, in the next couple weeks...
Where's my Winnie the Pooh bear at?
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Let's get ready.
And just like a red, white, and blue phoenix rising from the ashes of political bipartisanship, we are back to Salt of the Streets podcast.
This is Saturday, May 16th, 1:29 p.m., episode 85.
And welcome back to the Salt of the Streets podcast, your one and only source for social and political commentary on all the weekly news, pop culture, and sports that you can handle. And the best part about the whole deal, it's all built from the ground up for people like you and me, the everyday normal person. So come down and join us as we discuss life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and continue our endless efforts to bridge the gap between people and information.
Yes.
As always, I'm really excited because we're back in studio for the first time in like 2 months.
That was great. Cheers again.
Cheers. As
Welcome
always,
back.
we are your
in.
hosts. I'm Colin.
I'm Donovan.
And today we are joined by a very special guest, my brother, not only in arms, but also in blood, Chad. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
And yeah, this week we're going to be kind of just, it's going to be a grab baggy type show.
We're freeballing it.
Yeah, we're freeballing it with all things COVID and the like. And
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden for sure, because we didn't get to it last time.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of new things for that one, which are very interesting. But yeah, we're gonna see what we hit. I got a list of shit, and I'm sure you got a list of things. And
I
we're
got
gonna talk
2 pages of shit.
Perfect. And we're gonna find out from Chad some of the. Chad shouldn't be here right now. Yep. He should be up in the woods, but due to the way our state has handled our COVID response,
fuckery.
Yeah, there's some fuckery there that took him out of the woods essentially for reasons that we'll get into shortly. So that being said, where do you want to start? How's your work experience been lately, Donovan? Let's just start there.
That's a good one. So, what's up? You look. Is that a great thing to ask? You
our producer.
Yeah.
So
what's going on? You're here in studio. If you're not here, you can't be doing shit. 'Cause it's like
good gunshot.
Now you have to tell me what you're excited about.
Now I have to talk really loud. So Morgan Brenton, who we love, she commented on Facebook and let us know that today is actually an unofficial National Mimosa Day.
Oh, swag! Got him.
Super true. So look at you guys.
So cheers again with
let's
mimosas.
talk about fate. Let's talk about how the universe puts us exactly where we're supposed to be, and let's go.
Boom.
There we go.
Yes,
ma'am. Work. So I have started posting little videos that I've been taking while I'm there because it's been slower than fuck. If you listen to the show for a long time, you know I work at a company where I make neoprene orthotics. I make hand braces, knee braces, shit of that variety. And because everything around the country has been closed, for like non-essential services and whatnot, apparently, medical braces for children are not essential, which is weird. But there's been like no orders. It's been slow. We also do some stuff for baseball, so they've been ordering some stuff to try and like prepare for when the season does come back. When we're making stuff for just to have for when it does open up, because the different leagues are starting to talk about start dates just without fans. Like the NFL facilities can open up like next week, I think, and they can only have like 75 people in them, and they can't do any workouts or anything. It's just for like rehab and shit like that people can go there. Major League Baseball is starting to talk about, I think, in like July, trying to open up and do a short season just with no fans in the stands, So
I actually heard a little bit of sports news, and I don't know if you had heard about it yet, and I don't know almost anything about it, so I just know a little bit. So, you know anything about the new pitcher for the Rays that had some kind of contract trouble, that he was trying to swing some weight around and No,
I do not.
Okay.
No, but
I'll look at that for next time.
And I can ask the boys at work. I'm sure that they can tell me exactly.
One of the guys at work told me about it. I was like, I wonder if Don knows about that.
I'm sure all the guys at work know exactly what you're talking about. So because it's been so fucking slow, we were working with that other small company, the guy that makes our dyes for the presses. And we've been making medical shields that we were donating to like local medical centers and the first responders and stuff like that. And I guess we started sending them out of state too. There's an article they printed out at work from a town in Kansas.
Oh, wow.
Their local first responders got some shields from us, and so they wrote an article mostly about Louis, but they like mentioned our company and stuff. That's kind of how Bennick likes to operate, is in the background and very quietly. So that's also why I held off on the videos for a long time. Like I wasn't, and I don't think that they would have said like stop it, but just because I know they like to be quiet about it, I was. But once we hit 20,000, like we're at the point we've done 20,000 of these shields now, that we have sent out almost 20,000 shields, and I don't like.
All without a government mandate, too.
With zero government mandate, no one told us what to do. Louis took it on himself that he wanted to do something. He made a dye. He talked to Dan and Tim about it. He secured materials. We had Velcro. We have a workforce because he only has a couple of employees. Mm-hmm. We have a big shop and people, all the cutters have fucking nothing to do, So Dave is like the only one really that's been cutting, maybe one or two other guys. But the everyone else has been. That's who it is. Casey's doing TP and Dave is cutting, but that's like, everyone else is doing shields, and like a lot of the office ladies are back doing different stuff. And so the Velcro company that we get our pieces from, they've donated a fuckload of Velcro to the cause. Louis is trying to see about UPS and FedEx like donating shipping because we're starting to send them out of state. Mm-hmm. But Louis has been driving all around the state to deliver those shields by hand he's gone to Oregon. He's gone we had people actually from like fucking Klickitat or some shit like that. Came out
Klickitat County.
From Skagit County that drove out.
A little breakout.
Yeah, they drove out to pick up boxes of shields and then drive back there.
That's wild.
Yeah. We have people from all over the state that we're giving these things to.
Well, don't let me forget, because I want to ask you something about whether you know anything if the bosses there have gotten into the payments protection acts and stuff like that.
I don't know for certain. I know that in one of our meetings, because we are doing this thing, but just so as to give the full picture, right? Mm-hmm. We are not, I usually work like 50 hours or so a week, so like 10 hours overtime, because it's just me, so I support my family. And for the first like 2 weeks, we weren't doing overtime anymore. And so I was like, okay, so like that'll be fine, for a few weeks, but I still had to start using some vacation time, some sick time to make up for that. I stopped paying into my retirement for a little bit because I wasn't fucking going anywhere anyway.
It's throwing money down the hole right now.
They stopped making people pay on their accounts for like Sandmar, for buying clothes. So I stopped paying on that. So my checks were about
stock up.
So my checks were, I had just bought a bunch of new t-shirts like to print for us. So I just ordered $200 worth of shit, that I was like paying. I do like $25 a month or whatever a week. And so I was like, well, I'm going to stop doing that. So to like equal my checks out, and then after that, I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to work on Fridays anymore, and so everyone is working 36 hours a week. You can come in if you have other shit, you can do, but they don't want anyone working overtime, which is fine. I'm not at all upset at the company.
They probably have
we don't have any work.
Income.
They're making shit up for us to do because they want to make sure that we get paid, and they don't want to have to lay us off. They don't want to, which is a whole nother conversation in itself, but they don't want us to have to try and be on unemployment, because even though there are some people who are making more, as we know from our fucking friend, it can take 8 weeks to get any type of money at all, Cool, because you get a fat lump sum, but you still have to go 8 fucking weeks without any goddamn money. I can't go 8 weeks without any money. I can't afford to do it. I don't have...
Most people can't.
And that's my own fault for spending the way that I did up until now that I don't have money, saved up. I take responsibility for that, but I'm appreciative to have a job because I couldn't go that 8 weeks without an income and be fine without going into just a fucking massive debt with credit cards and shit to stay afloat, So it's, I'm using a lot of, or for a while, I had to use a lot of sick time and vacation time to break even,
It's like no matter what happens, it's dependent on what your work situation is. You're going to have...
Right.
It's a double-edged sword no matter which way you do it.
Right. And just because people are bitching on the internet, I'm not complaining about it does suck to have to use my own hours, but I am also appreciative to have a job. I'm very grateful to have a job, to be employed, to not, like I said, have to wait that 8 weeks to get money that might be better for a few weeks, but as soon as, the shit runs out, it goes back to not as much money as I was making before. So, I appreciate it. I'm happy to be working, but I'm also excited to be doing my regular job again. I don't want to be doing this anymore. Not that it's nice to be making those shields and to see the people up front that are benefiting, that are using those things, because we help people every day making things for children. I've made things for kids that are days old. So when you do something like that, that you're making a genuine difference. But we in the cutting department rarely see any of like the letters or cards or anything that comes in, because they come in all the time. Emails, thank you so much for doing this. Here's a picture of the kid, whatever the fuck. We just don't see that type of stuff. Yeah. So it can be really easy to get lost in that and for it to just feel monotonous. You're just cutting shit out, Yep. So even though this is also monotonous because we're just putting things together, it was nice to see pictures and cards and stuff of people wearing them and saying like, hey, I'm doing these tests. I appreciate this because I'm at risk of getting sick. There are people at Kaiser Permanente down the road. They were doing COVID tests with no shields, with like just masks on. Like no other personal protective, because they just didn't have it. They're just a small medical center that's like has a tiny urgent care, so they weren't receiving anything. Wow. And so Kyle fucking drove down there and was like, fucking please take this box of shields. Like, please God, take these,
right?
Yeah. And it's crazy, So,
that's good though. 'Cause I'm glad I wanted to kind of preface this because like you're in a situation that some people are in where like you're still working. You never really stop working, but you're operating at a reduced capacity. Yes. Right. Whereas Chad, I would love for you to kind of introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what it is that you do, because as well as anybody, most people don't do, and then talk about how essentially, how your business and how you've been affected by the shutdown, because it's a stark. What's the right word I'm looking at? It's totally different than what most people do. Yeah.
You're self-employed, right?
Self-employed. I've been shoeing horses for about 9.5 years.
So you're a farrier, right?
I'm a farrier.
So because, like I said in the pre-show, I did not even ever fucking hear that term before. You're like, my brother's a farrier. Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah. Unless you're in like the horse world already.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. Okay, so apparently there's a fucking difference between a blacksmith and a farrier. So what's the minute, if not minute, what's the difference between the two? Because I assumed that one dude did all of that shit, then I'm sure that people are better at other things, but
I'm going to say something and you tell me whether or not it's relatively a good, apt analogy for this. So a blacksmith works with metal and forging and doing all that stuff. A farrier they're basically like a horse foot doctor, but not really a doctor, a horse foot doctor and a blacksmith. Yep. So
you can diagnose problems with their feet too.
You're essentially a blacksmith and an equine podiatrist.
There you go. So it's like that's the difference. Is it takes a lot more to be a farrier than it does to just be a blacksmith, because you also have that other world of this is a living, breathing animal that needs the proper footwear.
Because if you're,
for lack of a better term,
if you're a blacksmith, you could make the shoes, but you probably couldn't put them on. Is that?
Yeah, and I mean anyone can learn how to do it, but when you're nailing a shoe on, you work in the margins of getting a nail within about 1/8 of an inch area. Otherwise, you can hurt them and potentially kill them if shit went horrible.
Yeah, like in a worst case scenario.
Right.
Like that's the margins you're working with.
About 1/8 of an inch for a nail, yeah.
So you can't be doing sloppy work if you're going to be doing farrier's work.
And the nail's got a beveled edge, which makes it curve, which means you got to aim it the right way, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I was helping Jordan's stepdad with something at his dad's house, and he makes saddles, like custom leather work. He used to be a fucking jockey.
I started a saddle.
Yeah.
I didn't
Wait.
George, what's the last name? Peugeot? Is that, out of Port Orchard. And
I know that
so that is her stepdad's stepdad. Yeah. So we go there for Christmas and shit. Yeah, George.
So you know him?
I know the name. He's
okay.
fixed a lot of tack and stuff for people I know.
He does.
That's cool.
The belt that I'm wearing right now, check this, right? This is a Peugeot, that's a Peugeot original right there. Made this for me for Christmas like 3 years ago. It's a fucking great gun belt. It's an amazing gun belt because it's so goddamn thick, the leather, and it's so stiff. Amazing. Yeah, it's a great belt. I've been wearing it for 2 years, like before I got the gun, I was wearing it. So, and it's still stiff as fuck. It's a great belt. Shout out George. So we're at his house and he has a horse out there and I was looking at its feet and there's, you know, the nails and shit. And I was like, how the fuck do you even do that? So I'm glad that you're here because the beveled nails makes a lot of sense because I saw that and I was like, how the fuck does that even work?
Don't put them in backwards.
Colin might actually be learning here pretty soon about a lot of that. And he could probably get in pretty good detail about it.
Well, Casey's doing the bovine podiatry
really?
with Rachel's dad.
Oh!
He's like apprenticing from Rachel's dad.
I was wondering who's going to take up from Mike, because he's been doing it forever.
Case Bowles. Yep, Casey Bowman is learning.
Good old Case Bowl?
He was our very first guest.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he works with me. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a fun guy.
Doing that. Casey's a great guy. Yeah.
And he's kind of like, okay, so back before you were a farrier, right? You were kind of, how would you classify yourself categorically in the post-high school, you know, social structure? Were you kind of
what a question.
Because you were a soccer dude, and you still are kind of a soccer dude.
Speaking of sports, Bundesliga opened up this weekend.
What?
Is that German
soccer league.
Okay. Well, good for the Germans.
Yeah, I watch American football, so you got to be way more specific. I went to one soccer game with her and her dad. Her dad's really into soccer, and when he lived here, he lives in Japan right now. When he lived here, he had season tickets for the Sounders.
Oh, word.
And so we had great seats. We went and we watched, and it ended in a tie, and the game ends abruptly, and people got up and they started
You're
leaving.
like, wait.
And I said, what? I was like, it's over? And they said, yeah, no, it's a tie. And I was like, what the fuck do you mean it's a tie? This is fucking America. It's like, you don't just end in a tie at the end of the game. I was like, you're supposed to play for at least 30 more minutes to find out who is the real fucking winner. And then if you're still tied, then maybe you call it a tie.
This is America. We have winners and losers.
Because I'll prove why their league rules are bad.
There was a whole, her dad was like, listen, point system and 1 and 1 and 2 and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, that's fucking all well and good, but this was still a tie. Like, that's great. They still both got 1 fucking point at the end of the day, and that's bullshit. Mm-hmm. So, but that's a very American standpoint on sports. It's different. Yeah, I understand. That's not a...
Right. But the point I was going to drive at was that I think you and Casey have this kind of weird similarity. Like, you went off to college as like kind of a semi-preppy sports guy.
Kind of,
right?
That ended around 16, 17 because I did run and start, left the high school, and I was like, I don't give a fuck people think about me anymore.
Another running start veteran over here.
It's the way to live.
And then all of a sudden he goes off to college for a semester or 2 or whatever. Then he comes back. He drove out there with a little yellow Lancer sports car, and then comes back in a red truck and sporting cowboy boots and shit. And ever since then, that's been his thing. And that's the impression I get from Case Bowles. Like, he used to be this baseball sports dude. And then he started, I don't know how he got roped into the rodeo dudes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
See, I got to a senior in credits. I was 3.5 years in. And then I went and did 4 days at a cattle ranch and went, this is a lot fucking better. So I left college, kept paying tuition for that semester because I didn't know how to quit.
Yeah, right.
Because I didn't really care. And I went and worked at a cattle ranch for 2 years and cowboyed for 2 years.
And now he's a farrier.
Yeah, and Casey dated a girl that was into horses, and so he got exposed to it. Right. And then they broke up, and he was still he had volunteered at other people's stables to help do shit already. So he was like, "Well, I should continue to do this." And then he helped out with the rodeo last year.
Fell in with that rodeo.
So he's carrying around one of the silver hammers, he's doing that. I don't know if you know.
Breaking into the Brotherhood.
Yeah,
it's some kind of little gang they got going on
with the dudes who the wranglers or the someone that has to do with the rodeo, setting shit up and taking it down and doing all that stuff. Yeah. The new guy's got to carry around these silver hammers
24/7.
Yeah, and if you get caught with it or you don't have it, then you got to buy a bottle of Jack for 10 dudes or something like that.
Yeah, sounds like something that'd be in the rodeo.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's always got this silver hammer in his back pocket, and then he got exposed to fucking cows, and so now he's doing the bovine podiatry.
It's good. It's good for him.
Yeah, it's good for him. It's a weird deal.
But anyways, how? Right. So now that we've established slightly about what it is that you do, Chad, how has the shutdown affected you? From when the first stay-at-home order came into effect, It still didn't affect you because you were an essential business, technically.
So, other than my 5-day quarantine to see the newborn nephew, since February 1st till now, I've had 5 days off.
So you're doing okay, essentially.
Working mostly 7 days. If you average it, it'd probably be 6 3/4 days a week.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, you give me a hard time for working a lot.
How much were you working
this
before?
guy?
Before, 5 to 6 days.
Yeah.
I do a lot of 12, 14-hour days.
And is that just because of the demand from your work, or you choose to work that long? What time do you start working so that you can work 14 hours?
Well, on the bright side, I don't usually start. I leave the house usually around 8, which ain't bad.
So you just work late and like into the early morning.
I get home 11, 12, 1,
Yeah.
a lot.
I mean, he'll drive all the way, like in a single day. He might drive out here and then go down to like south end of Key Peninsula.
I fill up about 4 days a week on my tank.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Long
I guess I didn't realize that you were traveled quite such large distances. But is there just like no people that do farriers work anymore?
We were
Like,
already short on numbers. There was probably 7, 8 well-known farriers on it. There's some backyard guys that do it anyways because they know how to tack a shoe on. Not usually great for the horse's health, but
they can get the job done?
yeah. But in the last 2 months, we've had 3 quit and retire. So there's about 5 of us to cover one of the most highly dense per capita horse populations in the country.
Yeah.
Are you fucking serious?
No, it's there's a lot of horse people.
I knew there was hella horse people, but I guess I didn't realize that it was.
Some counties in Kentucky and Florida are probably ahead of us,
Jesus
but we're
fuck.
at least in the top 10 in Kitsap County.
Are you fucking kidding me? All right, I really been trying to swear less on the podcast, but that really blew my mind. Like
We got a lot of horses out here.
that really kind of shocked me, and I knew that, but I didn't.
And that's a whole industry
I just per
that's
capita, I guess, I didn't
operating
seem like that
in the
much.
shadows.
When I first started shoeing, you knew about the 3 or 4 you see on the main roads.
That's so weird.
Just in Paulsville, there was over 20 barns.
And a barn
Really?
would be not just a person with a barn in their backyard.
They have people that don't
They're
have property
boarding
that
horses
keep
and
a horse
stuff,
at,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
What's the average amount of horses kept at a barn?
that you experience at
Yes.
least. Yeah.
10, but I've seen some up to 50.
Holy fuck!
Didn't you used to drive way up north
That's
somewhere on
so
the east
many
side that
horses.
had a ton?
I went up to Ferndale for
Ferndale.
a barn when I was first starting out.
You know where Ferndale's at, bro?
Yeah.
Way up.
Mostly because I take
Basically in
anything,
Canada.
but secondly because they had an outbreak of a disease.
A horse
Yeah.
disease?
Yeah, it's called strangles, which can kill them.
Strangles.
It's very contagious.
What? Yeah. So what is that? Elaborate.
And you're
It's
not a
like
veteran. You're not a
infections.
veterinarian,
No, but you know.
should.
They essentially get like these big infections up in their throat and neck area, and it can cut off breathing and
strangles them.
spreads really quickly.
Yeah.
A lot of times it has to come out, drain out all the big open sores and all that.
Fuck.
So that's so contagious that when I was shooting up there, I'd have to use medical cleaning supplies to just disinfect my tools, change my clothes before I even got in my truck, because if it got on my seat,
Really?
it can get to another horse at another barn.
So he's been ready for the viral outbreak
For a
since
long time
day
now.
one. Yeah,
It's also my job in the Army.
that's true. I forgot it. Yeah, because you were prior Army. And show Donovan your tattoo. Have you seen that?
That's, I mean,
that one?
that's the classic 18-year-old kid's tattoo.
There you go. Word.
Because you were a chemical weapons and specialist or something like
Chemical,
that. Right?
biological, radiological, and nuclear.
So yeah,
Well, there you
this
go.
is why he's in the apocalypse group.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
he can handle all those
He's on the
situations.
squad.
You know,
I used
tells
to
us
be in
when
those
we're going to
big
die.
bubble suits where they had the air tanks in them. That was my job.
Okay.
Which is fun. You don't get body armor because they said if something punctures your suit, who the fuck cares?
You're fucked anyway.
If it's so bad, excuse me, that you are to the point where you're having to wear one of those bubble suits, the bullets aren't,
Least of your concern.
yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Word.
wild.
So you're the last guy that we want to see walking down the block when shit pops off, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you were to be in the Army still.
Yeah.
All right.
That-
Right
that's
side,
closer
China
to
was
the
using level
outbreak.
2 stuff, so.
Ooh, yeah. That's true. Yeah, closer to the outbreak model than the contagion model.
Fuck China.
And I'm going to probably say fuck China a lot during this podcast, so I'm just going to preface this right now. When I say fuck China, I mean fuck the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party.
And none of us want to kill ourselves, so if anything weird happens, in the next
Yeah.
couple weeks,
Where's my Winnie the Pooh bear at? For a while, that was a staple of the podcast set.
Sitting out
I
here
think he's still
chilling.
packed away.
Yeah.
But
We'll find him.
But anyways, so you've been relatively unaffected by this thing. You've been working your tail off and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Have any of your customers? Have they expressed any inability to pay or not have much money now because they're not working? Does that affect you at all? You doing pro bono work?
Yeah,
I've got a few.
You got a lot of tabs going.
I got one. She's 5 minutes from my house. She had a cleaning company.
Oh, yeah.
And when
Like
the
a house
quarantine-
cleaning?
Yep. Right before the quarantine hit, she'd picked up a 500-unit apartment complex. Can no longer use that.
High highs and low lows, man.
When the
Jeez.
quarantine first hit, she had 2 weeks before she went under, and it's been how many weeks of quarantine we had now?
Oh, like 8 or 9?
I think 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a rescue horse, good horse. It's friendly. So I told her I'd trim it for free till she's on her feet. Plus, the gal's, she tips me $20 every time. I mean, she's bought herself at least 6, so why not do 12 for her? If she
How
needs
much does it cost for you to trim a horse's feet?
We went over this a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
didn't we?
really?
Just the
Me and him were
barefoot.
talking, yeah.
Just a barefoot trim is about $45 for a full size horse. Draft
And
horse costs more.
Does not everyone has shoes on their horse?
No,
No. Is that what's the difference?
Why would you put shoes on
Yeah,
a horse
yeah.
versus not?
so domestic horses are nowhere near the quality of wild horses.
Like-
As
wild
in,
horses, if you have bad feet, you die.
How hard they're... So that's
Their
a little bit
hooves
more
are?
natural selection going on out there.
Yeah, and
Now we get
Washington
snowflake horses.
Western Washington is not a great environment for horses' feet.
Yeah.
Horses don't naturally live in these wet environments where their feet soften up. So the shoes of
Oh, yeah,
protection.
makes sense.
A horse can so much as step on a rock too hard, get a stone bruise, cause a founder, and they die.
What is a
That's-
founder?
That's a whole other thing.
So foundering, just roughly.
Yeah.
You're not a vet, so nobody's going to put
A
you on the
horse-
spot. But
It has this main bone in their foot. When they founder, it starts with laminitis, which the inner part of the hoof is connected to the hoof wall by lamina, which links together like this. When they have laminitis, it gets inflamed and starts to separate. That
Oh.
separation can cause a coffin bone to drop, and it can literally drop out of their foot. And it'd be like losing
Oh.
your entire skeleton out of your foot.
Oh fuck.
oh, no thanks.
There's been 2 donkeys that have survived it ever in the history.
That's it.
So
Not
God.
laminitis, but the coffin would actually fallen out of the foot.
Yeah. Good God.
that's
you can
wild.
survive laminitis if it's treated correctly. It's once you know what you're doing, you can, if you get it early and catch it early, you can save it in like 3 days.
Wow. Yeah, horses are just spending the amount of time I have in and around them, my
They're
whole
finicky.
life mostly.
Yeah.
They're very finicky and they're very expensive.
And so, in what case would you not need to have shoes on your horse? Like if it's just a pet, if he's just hanging out? Or,
Yeah, especially minis, things like that. They don't usually have problems. Ponies, donkeys rarely need shoes. Mules don't need them much. The closer to a Mustang the breed is, usually the better feet they tend to have because they haven't had selective breeding by humans.
Mm-hmm. That's why, wolves turn into chihuahuas.
Are wild horses still a thing?
Oh yeah, they're actually to the point where they're hurting the environment.
What?
Yeah, they're pretty adverse. Do we have any herds, say, in eastern Washington or something like
There's
that?
a Yakima herd, a couple of herds. They're usually on the tribal lands because the tribal lands tend to have a lot of
Serious?
open
That's
areas.
so weird.
Oh, dude, you cross them mountains, bro, and it's a totally different
What a
world.
strange world we live in. Just this state. Just this
Yeah.
fucking state. This is blowing my mind. I'm
if you
surprised.
If you wanted to adopt a Mustang, it used to cost about $200, and now
That's
a lot
still
of farms
pretty cheap.
are getting paid $1,000 a horse to let them stay on their property.
So what we need to do is buy some land on eastern Washington. We'll just start a ranch, and we'll start bringing in
Put your
Mustangs.
horses here. That's cool.
You can get paid to adopt a Mustang now with
Really?
stipulations like you can't slaughter it, you can't just sell it off. You have to keep it and take care of it. But you
Do they
can
really
get
make-
$1,000 for a Mustang.
Do they really make glue out of horses? Is that a thing?
Their hooves.
Out of their hooves.
Yeah, I don't know if the practice is as big as it was,
I
but
don't
that
think it is.
it's big in like
Used to be a thing.
cattle and stuff. It's because it's that cartilage material stuff that their hooves are made out of, that outer portion that they use to make glue. That's why when you buy, I don't have a bottle of Elmer's glue, but there's a fucking
There's a cow on it. Yeah.
It's made from cow hooves. It's essentially the same type of thing, I'd imagine, on a horse's foot and a deer's
It's
foot.
same as fingernails. It's
All,
keratin.
Yeah.
all the cows
Keratin.
that get slaughtered for food, their hooves get sent sent to glue factories to.
If they're not, it'd be a bad business decision because what else are you going to do with it?
They also go to pet stores for dog treats.
Yeah. Our dog does eat cow hooves. That is a thing. I guess
I forgot about those. Yeah, you can buy the actual hooves.
What an ignorant fucking American I am. I'm just buying fucking horns and shit, and I know, they're just growing on a goddamn tree that I'm giving to my dog. Like, so fucking stupid. I don't... So
well, if that doesn't perfectly
show you, that
doesn't perfectly illustrate our.
I know all this stuff, and I'm this fucking dumb.
Well, it's
so stupid.
It's you don't realize, and like the language is kind of tainted because it's kind of been tainted by the left or whatever. But like the consumerism that makes up our American society, it makes it so that we don't necessarily think about all that stuff. It's the same reason why we don't think about where our food comes from.
Right.
It's because when I need glue, I just go buy fucking glue. And then that's it. I don't think
I don't even have to go to the glue factory. I just buy it at the store.
That's why there's anti-hunters who buy steaks at Walmart.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't make any sense if you really think about it.
I even remember, I used to be at a point where I was like, I just don't understand why anyone would need to do that because you just buy shit at a store. And then I'm like, well, why the fuck? Like, if you know someone you can get wild meat from, why wouldn't you do that? You can go and get it yourself. Why wouldn't you do that?
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of growing food and whatnot,
yes,
we both have started our nice little home gardens. You saw my pathetic excuse for my plants outside.
I'm gardening.
Compared to your beastly garden.
I'm gardening out here. Yeah, I told you it was 1 week yesterday since I planted all those seeds, and
they're popping.
Most of them, are going hard. So I have green and yellow squash, and I have some pumpkins and tomatoes.
Ooh, pumpkins.
My straubs, those ones are the ones from last year that made it all winter and just kicked it. And I had 5 other plants that came off of those ones. So I gave some to John and Olivia, and I gave one to Tyler. And we have a bunch of snap peas cracking, some onions, and some rainbow carrots.
Ooh, rainbow carrots, getting fancy.
Yeah, I got hella shit. So I guess our first carrot, little, single blade of grass came up yesterday, so
I love it.
One
single
carrot
blade.
cracking.
I'm trying to recall if I sent you that picture of the potatoes getting handed out yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay. So this conversation about agro got me kind of thinking about that.
You can grow potatoes in a trash can, dog.
Oh yeah, you can grow potatoes pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know how the Irish didn't figure that shit out back in the day. How was there a potato famine? You can grow potatoes anywhere.
Yeah.
But I'm just kidding.
Stupid Irish.
But anyways, this was something I wanted to ask you about, right?
It's not funny.
That's why I try to just move on, Donovan.
I'm not gonna lie. I usually enjoy history a lot and think I'm pretty intelligent with history. I always thought the potato famine meant they had to live on potatoes and nothing else. Because I've never even gone to Google on that one.
Well, in your own defense, Chad, the breadth of human history is rather large.
I always thought that's why the Irish love carbs.
Well, we do, man. You know that. We're a very Irish people, and we like carbs, as bad as they are for us. But anyways, I saw this, and I want to say the initial thing was a couple weeks ago. Some representative from the Washington State Potato Growers Association had come out publicly and said, hey, we have a massive surplus of potatoes that we want to give to the people.
Excess buds, yeah.
And excess produce in America, if you guys don't understand how big agro actually works, if to roughly control and maintain a normal cost of produce for Americans. Consistent cost of produce. On all produce items that are stocked in our grocery stores year round, even though you can't grow them here year round, there is a certain amount they can intake every single year into the system without causing a massive price skyrocket or drop or something like that, right? And so farmers generally will overgrow what the demand is set by the federal government and the Trade Commission and the Department of Agriculture. So they always have to dump an X amount of produce.
That's why they have grain silos, right?
Yes.
Hold on to that shit.
And it's in all aspects of everything that you farm or ranch. Yeah. I mean, it's just
just an example of what people would know.
Exactly.
People would know what a grain silo is.
And when because I am, me and the supply chain stuff that I've been keeping an eye on for so many, these last couple months. I saw that. Well, because I care about, I have rational self-interest here too. You know what I mean? If the supply chain is fucked up, I got to know, how big should I make my home garden this year? Big or just a little bit?
We bought extra eggs last week because there's, they're limiting how much meat people can buy. And I'm like, people are going to be buying more eggs. So just buy a fuckload of eggs this week before next week when people are buying all the eggs.
Exactly.
We have a fuckload of eggs. Peanut butter. People are buying a shitload of peanut butter. Buy the peanut butter. You know what I'm saying?
Meat, eggs. Yeah, just like anything dairy, which I think technically eggs are involved in.
There's like 3 things that people know where to get protein from. And it's fucking like eggs, peanut butter, and meat. So, if you like any of that other shit, get it now.
Because you do get protein out of peanut butter, but it's like a minute amount compared to actual, meat.
Certainly, yeah. But
as an aside, these
compared to nothing.
This representative from that potato growers thing came out with this public announcement about, hey, we want to give this stuff away to the food banks or whatever it is because restaurants aren't operating and people don't understand, I think, the percentage of produce that goes through that market. And so they came out publicly, and then next thing you know, I think it was the National Guard probably that offered up to help distribute all this stuff. Whereas, now this, my opinion thing starts to come in here. I'm assuming that the only reason that this is happening is because somebody in that growers association had the forethought to think, if I make a public pronouncement that I don't want to throw this stuff away, the government will be forced to, their hand will be forced to help out and distribute the food.
Yeah.
And so I saw that picture of what I'm assuming National Guard guys out just handing out bags of free potatoes. It was like 200,000 bags of potatoes.
Right. And I heard about that before you sent me the picture. I just hadn't seen the picture. And I saw just before you sent it to me, but then I heard it on a podcast earlier in the day.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And why is it just potatoes? That's what I'm asking now. Why haven't the pork industry or the beef industry or something like that? I know there's an extra stage of processing involved.
That's because of USDA regulations.
Go ahead.
And I would imagine a lot of it before, because you sound like you know way more about it than I do, but I would imagine that it also has to do with, part of it's the processing,
I would imagine, especially with meat.
That's exactly
I would imagine way more of the produce can go a little more direct to store, whereas all the meat and stuff has to be processed first, and those are the sick motherfuckers that are complaining, not to sound like, they're bitching, but they're sick. They want to know who's sick, but they're the ones that are actively, complaining, I guess is the best way to put it, but not with a negative connotation necessarily. Because, like I said, if you want to know who's sick, you want to know who's sick. That's fine.
Too many good words are contextually ruined.
Yeah, they are complaining. Yeah, whether it's certainly justified, but they are definitely complaining about what's happening. So, what are you judging?
It's like, don't judge these
people. We're happy to be together again. This is the last bottle of champagne. It only makes sense to just distribute it evenly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I over pouring, guys?
So there is one politician trying to fix the old slaughter problem and processing problem for the meat industry right now.
Who is it? Go ahead.
Thomas Massey.
Okay.
Word.
He's trying to pass the Prime Act at the moment.
Yes.
I'm not the full expert on this, but at the moment, to sell processed meat, all that stuff in grocery stores, it has to be USDA inspected.
Yeah.
To get
with
slaughtered,
a stamp on it.
Yes.
To get slaughtered at a processing plant and have all that, there has to be a USDA inspector there on site at the time.
Yep.
And at the moment, due to the virus and everything, they don't want to be there. They don't have to be there.
Boo.
The Prime Act would allow other smaller processing plants, which, by the way, I believe there's 4 companies that own all processing plants in our country right now, and 2 of which are owned by China. Whole nother subject. But
in China, dude,
the Prime Act will allow smaller processing plants to be trained by the USDA and still be USDA certified without an inspector being there during processing.
That would be nice.
That would be nice.
It's a similar problem to the way our country has essentially created the organic movement that we have. Mm-hmm. For something to be certified organic, you actually have to pay essentially to be part of the club and have it inspected and all this good stuff. And it's you have to all the regulations that you have to meet. None of them actually speak to what makes food organic.
It doesn't cost that much more to grow organic.
No,
but to get it legally sold in a store, it costs a lot more with all the.
And that just carries all the way down from just the USDA branding on whatever type of meat
right down
it
to the
is.
consumer.
Yeah. Yep, just goes all the way down. And for what, when you really think about it? Just to have a person on staff that can consistently just be hired and say like, yeah, that's all USDA prime, that's choice. Or you just have your meat facility inspected or your animals inspected, whatever it is, the one time or once a year or whatever, you know.
Well, this is not the first time just in this, you know, pandemic, in just since Corona. Like, we were just talking about the way here, like how weird it is that we're like starting to identify things. Oh, before Corona, since Corona, you know what I'm saying?
The pre-Corona era.
Yeah, exactly. That... What the fuck was that? Oh, since all this popped off, we've seen more than one time that the bureaucratic red tape has fucked with the process, you know?
Yep.
And, I mean, the first one I think I can think of is when they were talking about the test from the World Health Organization, which is WHO is a whole nother deal, but you know, they had tests available that other countries were using that were like, no, they're not FDA approved, so we're not going to use that. You know, we're going to make our own and wait. And so weeks go by before we have another test that we are going to use as Americans, you know? And we talked about like, well, at one point, you know, are we like, okay, we're willing to take not an FDA standard test as long as it's fucking something to get the ball rolling, and then when we have a test that's FDA approved, so we'll switch to that one, you know? And distributing things, you know, just the federal government not having a way to effectively distribute things to 50 states at the exact same time, or even fucking reclaim things from another country that we sold to them after we should have, you know? Yeah, like, we're like, sorry, we now have to send the military to China to go and pick up things that we shouldn't have sold and then they wouldn't send back, you know? So
you know how like all the super rich celebrities that are well off and all this, they've been calling this whole thing the Great Equalizer, right? It's the Great Equalizer. As ridiculous as that sounds,
since they can all get tested and
whatever. Madonna can sit in her pearl bathtub with rose petals and talk about how it's the Great Equalizer.
Carolina has to tell people she thinks she's going to die so that she can get a fucking test. She's like, also shortness of breath and like can't breathe, you know?
I mean, 3 months of pneumonia will probably make anybody not feel so hot, but, you know.
Don't forget, we're all in the same boat.
Indeed.
Everyone's equal here, Colin.
Everyone.
Especially since the Great Equalizer. Sorry,
the point I was going to make. That this COVID thing is definitely not the Great Equalizer. Right. I like to think of it as the Great Glass Window. That all of a sudden now there's been these deep dives into how our governmental and societal infrastructure cross over and what kind of ridiculous, we'll say, a tangle of red tape that's kept our system held up just on, you know, razor's edge for as long as it has. And now that we're seeing this whole thing kind of systematically fall apart, you have a much better understanding now of how easy it is for it to not work at all.
Yeah.
And my personal opinion on this is the real devastation to the virus and our effect, we'll say our the way we handled it, won't really be totally clear to us for another like few months, but we're going to see how bad we screwed up in a few months when there's massive supply shortages. But like I said, that's just my opinion. It's starting to look more and more like things are on my side, but time will tell, and a lot of things could happen between now and, you know, total devastation of the economy, but we'll see. But I like the fact that this thing that we've done to ourselves has opened so many more people's eyes to just how, you know, dysfunctional our government truly is and how ingrained in everyone's lives it truly is, even without us knowing before. And now we're experiencing it on an insane level, from everything from civil liberties to our food supply chains, everything that allows us to become this consumer society that we have been.
Yeah.
And we're all getting a good look now at how fragile that fucking system is. And it's all run by a giant group of people that have no clue how we all live our daily lives.
So let's kind of expand on that, right? Because
is that not a segue?
So, well, it is, right? Because that's actually one of like the topics that I have written down. failures of government is like how I've listed it on my notes here, right?
I feel like Chad has a few things to say about that.
I'm sure that that's exactly what I brought you. And the first one that I have is that Congress doesn't know what people need. They don't know how people live. They don't know. There are so many people in Congress that are like, $1,200 is plenty of money for people to be fine until we figure out another fucking bill to give you more money, you know? It's like, that's not enough money, you know? You think that's enough money because everyone's bitching and trying to get $15 an hour, so you think that $7.50 an hour or whatever, $1,200 equals out to a month, you know? Like, ain't shit, $5.50 or something. I don't remember what it is, but it's not very much money, you know? They're like, this is what people make and live on all the time. They're always talking about they don't have enough money, so this must be totally sufficient, you know? When we talked about last week also, when you have the House of Representatives talking about how it's too dangerous for them to go back to work and be in that enormous fucking room together, but they're asking people to be inside of McDonald's as a fucking Safeways every day and see hundreds of people, and like, well, we'll figure out what you should get in return when this is all over. We'll talk about that, you know, when it's done. But we also have to wait until it's safe enough for us to go back and have the conversation because it's just too dangerous, you know? Like, at what point in history did the people of Congress become so much more fucking important than everyone else in the country? And I don't mean as far as, like, of course, the president is the leader of the world, or the leader of the nation, you know? When shit pops off, you protect the president, you know? But their lives don't hold more value than ours do, you know? And so there's no reason that they should have any way to justify not going back to work when regular fucking plebes are expected to go to their jobs and just eat shit for whatever they were making before, even though now it's, according to their narrative, you know, 10 times more dangerous for them to be at work now, but just stick with what you got. Like, it's just strange. So I think the glass window is like a really good way to put it, because it just exposes how fucking disconnected that part of, you know, that Washington
class.
DC is from all of the rest of the world, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's that.
What you got on that, Chad?
Yeah, what do you think about that?
That really depends how deep you want to go. Because I can go full common sense and I can go full Eddie Bravo on this one.
So let's just put it in this context.
Well, common sense first, and we'll work our way down the rabbit
let's say, what about...
Because I'm pretty deep in there with you.
Right. What about the idea of the People's House of Congress makes them not an essential worker?
Yeah.
What would you think is justifying that in their mind? And what do you truly think about their position as
I don't know what
non-essential
justifies it in
workers?
their mind, but they're elected to represent the people, and if we have to work, they have to fucking work. There's none of this vote by mail, do a little Zoom call and tell you what I'm going to vote. That's going to decide the fate of everyone's fucking livelihood
Like
in
another
our country.
$3 trillion that just got remotely voted on last night?
Yeah, and they also passed the fact that
Did you know that?
police can follow your social media and stuff and look at all your info without any warrant necessary now.
Can I ask you something before we continue down? Let me ask, because there's, in regards to representatives for the government, whether they're senators or representatives, right? There's generally among, you called yourself radicalized to a certain extent, so among non-radicalized people, there's generally two schools of thought as far as representation goes. That when you elect someone, their job is either to do, you know, the will of their constituents, whatever the people are voting for, whatever we're saying you should do is what you should do, what we want. And the other school of thought is that, well, the people elected me to do what I think is best, and so I'm going to continue and just do whatever I think is right, regardless of how they may be voting at that time. You know, they've chosen me for my discretion. Do you think, if you had to choose one of those two things, where would you sit on that side?
Represent the will of the people.
Yeah.
So even if it's against your conscience, vote the way your constituents tell you to vote.
Yeah.
I think,
I wholeheartedly agree. Yes.
Right. I had a whole thing about this new announcement that was passed.
Oh, which he's since walked back somewhat in some areas. Yeah.
I just watched that this morning. Yeah. And so, yeah, we can get into that, you know, like it's, but
anytime.
Yeah. So, what the fuck was it that you had just do you sit that place normally, or do you find yourself somewhere else? Do you like just not agree with the representative government as a whole, or are you down with the system, or what's the? Give me a rough outline of your view? Man, that's a tough question.
It's like the general view of how you think government should operate.
Yeah.
Government's only job is to provide you liberty and freedom, and that's it. All their job to do is maintain your liberty and freedom, and the rest is on you. There's no backup plan. If you fuck up at life, it's your fault. You're free to do what you want to do.
So if you were going to say, well,
as long as you do not
broad
affect
category.
how far do you think that responsibility extends into their, like, as far as the protection of liberties and freedoms? Do you mean just in like a militaristic fashion, or do you think,
well, let me just throw this one out. Maybe this will help get to the answer you want.
Yeah.
If you were, because I'm not going to throw out progressive, because you're definitely not a progressive. Certainly, but if you were going to call yourself one of these broader categorical political assignments that we've decided to title ourselves, say an old school liberal, like a classical liberal.
Yeah.
There we go. A libertarian,
like
an ANCAP, a conservative, or a neocon. What would you best classify yourself?
Probably an ANCAP.
ANCAP.
I think municipality would be the best way to run any government.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think the reason I asked you that is because just this morning I was on Facebook, which fucking,
bad,
whole nother deal. But it's the day before the show. I got to get a reading of where people are at. So that's true. And someone, I don't remember who it was talking about, like, it's like the government's job is to protect my rights, not my health. So fucking fuck off with my health and just like protect my rights. And I agreed with it to a certain extent, but also found myself not agreeing with it, that I feel like because I think that, and sitting here now, right, I think that my stance, at least my issue with that particular statement that person made was, I think that takes a lot of the personal responsibility out of it, that I think it's very much on you to ensure that your rights and freedoms are being protected. Like, I have a hard time conceptualizing of a way other than a military that the government can effectively protect your rights and freedoms like on an everyday basis, and so I think that's why I ask you that question, is just because I was trying to figure that out myself this morning, that I don't necessarily disagree with that, because it's certainly not their job not to protect our, it's not, like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, but I also think that it's, especially in times like this where we're seeing so many people feel like their rights are being infringed upon by the government, I'm like, well, because they're right, like, this is on you to make sure that this is not happening. That's why, like, we talked about the protests in Michigan last week. I didn't necessarily have a problem with people walking around with ARs and shit. I'm like, this, I kind of think that that's your job right now, is to be doing that and showing people, not in a necessarily threatening manner, but like almost like a show of force, a flyover in another country with fucking F-16s. They're like, hey, don't forget, we're just over here on the other side of this imaginary line that we've cooked up. We still got a bunch of fucking jets over here, and I think that this is one of the other things I wrote as lessons learned. That's like one of the big topics. It's one of the things that I learned in this time is that are reaffirmed for me, that I think that it's very much on us as a people to ensure that doesn't get taken away, and we have begun to live in such a time where we've ceded so much power away from ourselves to the local governments, to the federal government, because we want to be safe, we want to feel protected, we want to know that everything is okay, and I don't, like, that obviously is not working, we have all done this for this long, and now you have people like that fucking doctor I was talking about, the chiropractor, who her biggest issue is she doesn't trust vaccines, and now she's looking at corruption within the entire government of, fucking bracelets and tracking and all this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're almost 40 years old, and you're just now realizing that maybe the government isn't always the right answer, and I've like, it shocks me that so many people have forgotten that.
The people aren't supposed to fear the government's supposed to fear the people.
Right. And I think that I've not said it that exact way, but that's what we've been kind of like alluding to, I guess, over the last like 3 episodes, that there's like, I don't know why we as a general mass have forgotten that, that we're like, oh no, we shouldn't ever act like we're threatening at all. No, we don't ever want anyone to feel like they're, any type of trouble or like anything like that. Then what recourse is there for someone leading in the country down the fucking shithole? If they're not afraid of anything that's going to happen, because in the end, I'm going to have a shitload of money and I can surround myself with dudes with guns anyway, then what's like, what did they all have to lose? If Donald Trump said it himself, what do you have to lose? What do any of them have to lose other than to stay the fuck home and kick it and do whatever they want with all their money while we sit around and wait?
Yeah.
You know,
what do we have to lose? But, you know, these things
understand
we have called constitutional rights and civil liberties, for God's sakes. And I think, again, that glass window is showing us that there is a vast amount of people that live in this country that just prefer to have the helicopter parent of the government and just don't want to deal with the trying to survive and make your own way through life when you can sit. I mean, we have an entire generation now of, you know, we'll call them snowflakes for lack of a better term, that have no concept of that personal responsibility that is so lacking. You know, that's why let's do this, right? Let's look at it this way. In those protests in Michigan, where they come in, they didn't storm the fucking Capitol building like so many articles say.
They were temperatured and fucking walked in. Yeah.
Which is, temperature checks. We'll talk about that. Like,
I have
a bugaboo about a lot of this stuff. But, you know, there's a big conversation about, like, I mean, you'd even hear from Shapiro when he talks about it. He's like, well, why do you have to show up with a gun? You know, like, that's just dumb because now you're coming off as threatening. And like, well, I understand that if you're trying to get your point across a little bit more to somebody that has no concept of a Second Amendment, showing up strapped is going to ruin part of your case because now you're just scaring people.
Right.
But in all actuality, that act of civil disobedience is, like you said, it's showing the government that we're not supposed to fear them. They're supposed to fear the populace. They're supposed to fear us. Their jobs and their livelihood depend on us putting them in fucking charge. But our class system has gotten so ingrained into society, we just think that those are our betters, and we just have to listen to what they say because daddy knows better. Daddy government knows better.
Right.
You know,
he knows best.
We used to tar and feather politicians didn't represent us, and now we follow them on Instagram so we can send a mean comment on their next fucking post.
Yeah.
That's about as perfect, I think, analogy as you could put it.
Yeah.
We've gone from tar and feathering the politicians that didn't represent us to sending them mean tweets. Wow.
Calling in to fucking C-SPAN or the Washington Journal or whatever that's called. They have some name when they're taking calls.
I think it's Washington Journal.
They have the Republican line, the Democratic line, and the Independent line. And it is some of the most off-the-wall shit you've ever heard listening to those calls in between different shows or whatever, you know, on C-SPAN. It's the weirdest thing. But, like, that's what people do. Like,
and then you got to remember,
this is my outlet. Yeah.
The type of people that will listen to NPR or the C-SPAN enough to call in to C-SPAN. Yes. Those are some deeply ingrained people with not a lot of things better going on in their life. I think that's why you get some of the weird stuff. But yeah, anytime there's like, we're listening, because we listen to a lot of C-SPAN, obviously, on this show. And in between, like, when they take their breaks to go vote or something like that during a testimony or a hearing or anything like that, that's what they do. They switch over and they'll do a little bit of narrative on what happened, and then they'll just open up the lines to calls, and it gets real weird real fast.
And I think that it's important for us to say, like you were talking about, well, you and Chad were both talking about, you know, the going into the Capitol with guns, you know, and that the government should fear the people and not the other way around. I think that it's important to note, regardless of Chad begrudgingly or choosing to, you know, to identify himself as an anarcho-capitalist, that's not a radical idea. You know, it is literally ingrained in the founding documents of the United States. It's not a radical idea that it is our job with the Second Amendment to defend our rights and freedoms. It is literally ingrained in the founding documents, you know, and it shows a serious weakness in the constitutional understanding of the general populace when it is seen as a threat or just a general fucking bad deed to show up in the Capitol with firearms. You know, like that's not how this should be seen. You know, regardless of your view on firearms as a topic, people showing up in the Capitol who are comfortable with that, who are proponents of the Second Amendment, who choose to own firearms, that should not be your view of them because you don't agree with their choice to do so. It should not be your view that they're there to terrorize the people who lead this government.
Exactly.
And anyone serving in government who doesn't have a competent enough understanding of the Second Amendment to truly understand what those people are doing and why they're there shouldn't be serving to begin with. If you are seeing it as a threat because people are there with guns, you should not be there serving because you don't understand the document you've sworn to defend. You don't have an actual conceptual idea of what that means because you are there acting as though they're expressing civil disobedience and defending their rights, expressing their freedoms. You're acting as though that's just an intrinsic, negative, terroristic thought. You know, you don't even deserve to be serving in this government. You don't even understand how this really works, you know? But instead, that's what gets championed is that congresswoman that was there who's saying, oh, there are people here with guns. People who have bulletproof vests are wearing them. I'm terrified for my life.
Yeah.
That's what gets posted on the media. Not that these people who, in all of the last 9 weeks, possibly the most patriotic people we've seen do anything in the last 9 weeks besides the fucking doctors and first responders that are out putting their lives on the line to make sure that people are sick. These are possibly the most patriotic people we've seen in the last 9 weeks. And they're painted as fucking domestic terrorists because they have rifles. And that's not a radical thing for me to say. And it's frustrating. I don't want to go on for a long time, but I was telling Jordan earlier this week, from the time that we started the podcast to now, I've lost over 120 Twitter followers. I think largely because of, I don't have any problem telling people. Fucking yesterday I tweeted, if you end up in a FEMA camp or a federal camp, you're a fucking weak American. If you are willing to allow your family to be separated from you and allow their safety to be taken into someone else's hands, you are a fucking weak American. I will sooner take up arms than allow my son and my wife to be taken from me and placed in someone else's protection. And if you allow that to happen to you or your family, you're a weak fucking American. You don't understand why we are here. You don't understand why so many people have died to allow us to live here. I just don't. It's shocking to me that anyone can even... They're talking about putting bracelets on me. What are we going to do? I don't put on the fucking bracelet. I don't, what do you mean? What are you going to do?
You have an option.
Say, fuck you. Don't touch me. Don't touch my son. Don't touch my wife. I don't even understand the question. What are we going to do? Don't get in the fucking Jeep. Where's your gun? Do you own a gun? You maybe should, even if you never ever use it, unless the government one day shows up and you never have to touch it. Maybe you should have one, because look at where the fuck you're at now. You have to ask what you're going to do if the government decides to put a bracelet on you. Mm-hmm. Fuck you, dude. That's just, it's ridiculous to me that that's even a point that someone can try and draw to fucking scare people. You know, why are you even scared of that? It's shocking to me.
Well, and the fact that there's so many people that would see that and get freaked out and go, well, I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. This is America. We have generations of people that have completely lost sight of what this country was, obviously, and what it should be and where it is now. And we just accept the status quo for what it is. And then when daddy says to jump, we jump. We just ask how high.
We just close up shop and go home and wait until they tell us we can go back. You know?
And that's...
And I'm not even at a point where I think that it was a wholly terrible idea, you know, but I think that just like you said, just the rollover and fucking, you know, I think is crazy. Like that there was the only type of questioning was ridiculous fucking conspiracy theories that it's like, well, this guy's just a crazy asshole, you know? And anyone who had any legitimate point about, well, maybe we should ask, you know, their videos are taken down off of YouTube, you know, that fucking video I posted it there, its places as partially false because the gene might have come from a pangolin instead of a bat. Of the whole hour-long video, there's the one thing, and it's pasted as partially false. But people can sit there and post conspiracy theories all fucking day, and no one ever says anything about it, you know?
Especially because nobody has any cause to talk shit on or throw shade or any falsehood on that, because all of our expert scientific community is still trying to get a handle on this thing, because newsflash, it's a coronavirus, which...
It's a novel coronavirus.
It's a new one. It's a novel coronavirus, means we have... It's probably going to take a couple decades for us to actually figure out the true effect of what this does to the human body, you know. And then you listen to that Ron Patrick thing this morning. If you really stop to think about it, or if you did a little bit of research, you'd find that you live with a number of viruses consistently your entire life.
Every day, yeah.
And every single person we have different DNA, we have different genes, we have all these different things that will make our massive, insanely complex microbiome of living things that live inside and on us and all these different things interact with each other in different ways.
But wait, I heard they're going to have
a vaccine real quick.
For it.
Yeah.
Which is, just a mutation of the cold virus, and we don't have a vaccine for the cold.
Yeah. You'd think maybe, right? There's so much nonsensical assumptions, I think, that are being made that we could probably get into a little bit more as we talk about testing and reopening and stuff like that. And the rhyme or reason. I just, at this point, with what little we do know, my personal opinion is that I don't understand what we're doing anymore. Nothing that we're doing seems to make sense anymore. I was on board with the original lockdown, right? Because of this.
Let's hold off. Let's figure out. Yeah, exactly.
2 weeks is fine.
Curb, flatten the curve a little bit so that, because the original intention of flatten the curve was so that we do not overload the medical system. Yeah. We could stock up on supplies, bing, bang, boom, and then now we can handle any surge cases that come up. Our medical system is familiar enough with it, and we know how to handle it. We can do this. But that's gone now. We flattened the curve, but we're still doing these things. LA County just extended their things. In most places, yes.
More than just to the curve. 1 in 3 hospitals are facing bankruptcy right now.
No, we've seen, I mean, I get emails from like the Seattle Times every day, and so they'll email every day with the amount of cases, new cases in Washington. One thing that Jay Inslee has talked about is we want to see a consistent decline in new cases every day. We have seen a consistent decline, maybe not every single day, but a consistent decline over this period of new cases. So, and now he's like, well, we got to talk about this and we got to talk about this and blah, blah, blah. And I, like you were talking about earlier, he had to walk back some of the but the personal information things he was talking about at restaurants,
for contact tracing. And stuff.
When he got asked about it on Wednesday, I think it was, he said that, they were talking about restaurants. When you go somewhere, you're going to give them some type of personal information, and, it goes along with the contact tracing thing, so that if someone is there and you were there at the same time and they end up having COVID, then they're going to call you and tell you, hey, you were potentially exposed to someone, who had this. And so just quarantine yourself. And people were fucking up in arms about it, which is like a deal all in itself, because to be honest, it's information they fucking already have anyway. But, there's people that were up in arms, about it, and they had to walk it back. He's like, just kidding, we're not going to do that. It's like not a good idea. And I think
a little bit too much pushback.
At this point,
I haven't seen his new, did he walk back him saying that he can legally, forcibly remove you from your home to a quarantine center?
I had looked at all his pronouncements, and I didn't find any verbiage that he alluded to a little bit of it from what I saw. But then through the walkbacks over the last couple days, you could tell that he was just spouting off. That might have been I don't know if he's smart enough to do this, throw like some verbiage out there that might be a little bit more intense or have some kind of gray area that could open up to some more broader executive power. But he has since stopped using that kind of language and reiterated that any of these kind of tracking and tracing protocols that they want to put in place for restaurants is still strictly voluntary.
Yeah.
Because he knows he can't force people to do that.
And he was also very adamant, you can go back and forth all day about whether or not you can trust what the government says, but we really have to just kind of try and operate off what they're saying. And we know that they lie, so we're not taking everything wholehearted, and not, but just for everyone, we're not taking everything the government says and just eating it the fuck up because that's what they're saying. Yeah. But we also have to take what they're saying and then work with what we know around it.
Yeah.
And
we work within the parameters of the game that's already set.
He was very, very adamant in his address on Wednesday that all of that information was going to be put in like a super secure portal where they're only keeping it for 2 weeks and then they're going to dump it out, because that's the length, that's the gestation period, or I always fucking say that. I always fucking
incubation period.
Incubation. I always say that. Yeah, it's the incubation period for the virus. Yeah, so they'll dump it after 2 weeks, and the only people who have access to it are, I have a picture actually of, it's the National Guard, people who work for the Department of License, and then also like social and health workers.
Yeah.
351 National Guard members, 390 people from the Department of Licensing. It's 630 state and local health officials. So other than the National Guard, it's people who already have access to that information on a daily basis.
Right.
If they see you and know what your name is, they could literally look up all that information on a daily basis. Not that I'm trying to say it's not a big deal, but just for people who are like, it's a fucking complete invasion of my privacy. Like, this information is readily available. They would get fired because
you don't have privacy anymore.
No, it's an improper use of the technology. So I'm not saying they're sitting there looking shit up because they would get fired if someone found out. But the people who are going to be doing this, other than the National Guard, already have access to this information. It's now just being provided voluntarily, as opposed to them having to find your name and then look it all the fuck up themselves, and then you don't know anything in the end anyway. You're none the wiser, you know? So
we saw that presented pretty clearly when they were talking about the travel data over the last couple of weeks and monitoring traffic and stuff like this.
People's GPS is on their phones.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even though they insist that it's all anonymized and they blah, 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 you still are tracking me. You're still tracking all of us.
So let's talk this, right? Because he, again, in this thing on Wednesday, alluded to the use of an app, you know, that would indicate to you if you are within the proximity of someone who's tested positive for COVID-19. And so that would...
From what I heard, it's in the new 13.5 update for iPhones. Well, a choice
in the health thing, there is something that relates to GPS services. I have seen that in the health part of, like, if you use the health app on your phone, then that's some of the data that it can collect. I've never used the health app on my phone. I would assume there's still something to turn off probably, but
you also can't fully delete the app off your phone.
Yeah. Right. It's an app that comes on there. You can turn off the navigation services. I'm sure in the dark part of technology, there's a way that Apple can creep in and flick it the fuck back on anyway.
Tor did that.
I'm sure.
Find Friends still work.
But,
Find Friends
still works.
She turned off her tracking, and they still found where she was.
So I will say, you know, me and Chad have this app on our phone called OnX Hunt, which is amazing and multifaceted, and I even use it for work all the time. But you can be in the middle of nowhere with no service on your phone, and you can pull out that app and still get a rough GPS position within 10 feet of yourself.
You can have an X on your signal, and it'll be 10 to 30 feet of where you're at.
Which is wild.
So in this app they're talking about, right, that would mean you would have to download it and then mark in there, indicate whether or not you are positive or negative or if you've had the coronavirus, so that it could use that information to ping off of your phone to tell me that you've had it and that I'm too close to you, you know? Yeah. Which is something that I wrote down that it's China-esque because they're literally doing that in China. Like, they literally have apps in China that will tell you if you're in the proximity of someone who has the coronavirus. So they also, like, they're using that same app that you have to mark in there if you're positive or negative and scan a fucking QR code before you go in any building, you know? And it's important to recognize and to understand that there are differences between the Communist Party of China, you know, and the United States government. There's, like, a certain amount of things they can and can't do, at least publicly. You know, there's a lot of shit the government's still going to do that the Chinese government is going to do. You're just not going to know about it like you do in China.
I don't have a problem with other countries doing it.
Yeah.
The reason
because they're not
we
America.
shouldn't do it here is because we're free.
Yeah. Exactly. It boils down to that. You know,
every other country in the world can do it. I don't give a fuck. But they're not us. Yeah. That's why we're fucking better.
Exactly. It boils down to talking about an app on your phone. Don't download the app. Don't use the application.
I'm not the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I'm not advocating for government dissent because far be it from me to incite any type of riot or, you know, public anything because I'm trying to be a public figure. So far be it from me to incite anything. I am telling you it is well within your rights as an American citizen to choose what apps you do and don't use. And it's well within your rights as an American citizen to choose what anklets you do and do not wear and what fucking camps you do and do not stay in. That is well within your rights, regardless of what fucking King Jay Inslee says when he's up on the podium, you know, or he's sitting in his chair with his mask in his back pocket and he's like, I can, you know, if I want to put you in a camp, I'm going to put you in a camp. I don't. That's all good. You can say that all day, but that's not how this works, you know? There's The 10th Amendment does not say underneath, also you can do whatever you want because it's not said in here.
Yeah.
You know, it says it's a state's issue, but he doesn't get to do whatever he wants just because the federal government doesn't have a say. Like, it doesn't work that way. Doesn't get to make up laws. He doesn't get to do stuff like this, you know, so it's...
And if people want to argue against that because this is a virus and, you know, health and safety of all people and all that good stuff, I would like you to examine the federal government's response in the World War II era with the Japanese internment camps on U.S. soil and locking up U.S. citizens in internment camps.
Because they were
that
Japanese.
Did not go so well in the long run. This is not something that you should ever want to okay as a society, no matter how bad things... People could be turning into zombies from the virus, and you should still not be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because it is a core fundamental... You know, it's a core principle of these United States of America that we all should be holding dear and be defending at every chance that we need to. And any time we need to, like now. We need to be defending against these government overreaches. And just because your neighbors don't approve of it, because whatever their political views are different than yours, they say, or whatever, if you still have those core principles of the government, you know, the don't tread on me principles of the government cannot literally tell you what to do unless you are in direct violation of a law, including a federal statute or a state statute or a local statute.
Yeah.
Everybody has jurisdiction. And okay, so let's put it this way. Being a citizen requires you to uphold X amount of duties as a citizen.
Certainly.
One of which, the most common everybody thinks
It's your civic duty.
It's your civic duty as a citizen of America to sit for jury duty if you need to, right? And mind you, there's people that don't necessarily agree with that and stuff like that. But ideally, in a normal America, you have a duty to uphold your own rights, your own constitutional rights. That is one of your duties as a citizen. And if you decide that you don't want to do that anymore, you have a fundamental misunderstanding of your responsibilities as a citizen. This is not we have the right to vote, right? It's the option to vote. But if you really think about it, your civil duty is to vote for your representation.
Right.
I mean, if you're not out there voting, you're doing something wrong. Even if I understand that. Go ahead.
I'm not going to vote for somebody who doesn't represent me. And if no one represents me, why the fuck am I going to vote for him?
That's a good point, too. I guess that's more in the real world. How do you do that? How do you uphold your civil duty of trying to pick your representatives if the best we can consistently do is force ourselves into a lesser of two evils situation?
And that's what's brought us to where we're at.
Let me try that, because I agree with that. I'm not going to vote for someone who doesn't identify with with my morals, that doesn't align with what I'm talking about. And so I have a hard time with that all the time. You know, I don't.
It's tough.
I don't have any way to convince someone to vote if they don't feel like there's someone who represents their interests. Yeah. You know,
you can't vote Libertarian anymore because he just dropped out.
I can't vote for. I can't vote for Joe Biden because, I mean, on any number of things, but for the biggest thing for me, you know, is a Second Amendment thing, is when you're talking about firearms. I can't vote for someone who's going to try and infringe upon that right any more than it already has been. And that's a conversation all in itself, you know. And he said any number of times, well, I'm not trying to infringe the Second Amendment, you know, but you also said that you're going to put Beto O'Rourke in charge of guns, you know, and when that guy's talking about taking away people's ARs and AKs. Robert. Yeah. You know, that's not something that I can't vote for that. You know, I don't know. Fucking Donald Trump's a whole other deal. I don't like him as an individual. I think he's a bad person. You know, any number of politicians is a bad person, but I don't want to vote for someone who I also think is a bad person. There's all kinds of other things I don't agree with. I can't personally vote for either of those dudes. I may not mark that box on the next ballot.
Yeah.
When it came to
this moment,
when it came to the primary, I voted for Tulsi Gabbard. I knew Tulsi Gabbard wasn't going to win. I knew she wasn't going to get any delegates. I know that she's not going to go anywhere. All I can do for myself personally,
vote your conscience.
That's all I can do. I can represent my morals. And so that's, like I said, you may not always have that choice. In the presidential race, you got two choices generally. There's a bunch of other people you can pick, but no one knows who the fuck they are. No one knows what party they're from or any of that shit. So you can vote for them, and that may be the option. You have to vote your morals.
I wrote in Ron Paul last
You write someone in. There's any number of things that you can do. Yeah. But all you can do is, just vote your morals. Do not in the progressive, weird, backwards democratic sense, but in the true, genuine fashion of vote your morals. Vote for who you think best represents your interests, even if you know that person isn't going to win. You voted, you did your duty, you did your part, and here we are. And if you don't have that option, like I said, because when you have two, you don't have one, it is what it is. So there's been people, especially for local elections, there's one person running. Fuck you, I'm not going to vote for you. I don't like what you said, and you don't have another person, so I'm just not going to vote for this office. Even if you're going to get it because you're the only person running, I'm not going to contribute to that. Yep. And I don't
write myself in just because you're running unopposed.
And there's all those people, especially in 2016, voting for Gary Johnson is voting for Donald Trump. That's bullshit. I'm going to vote for who I want. And if I don't think that person represents me, I'm not going to vote for them. I have done my part to not contribute to that,
And Obama versus Romney, I voted our mom for president.
Sometimes that's all you can do. Yeah.
Should do better than they would have done.
Dan told me he wrote in Steve's name one year.
Oh, nice.
Which I think is great. So
that is great. Yeah. Good old Steve.
Yeah. All you can do is just fight for your own personal interests, and sometimes that's really not pretty, and sometimes it looks like doing nothing at all. That it can look like any number of different things, whether it's fucking like that woman in Texas who's opening up her hair salon. She's like, I'm not going to not work because I'm willing to socially distance. We're all going to wear masks. We're going to be as healthy as we can. But these people, I watched a press conference from her the other day when she got out of jail because she was in jail overnight or a couple of days or something like that, whatever it was. And she was saying I'm not going to close my hair salon back down because I have employees that are choosing between eating themselves or feeding their children. She's like, and I'm not going to contribute to people having to make that choice. She's like, and I think that it's fucked up. The government is making people choose that, and
because from a 30,000 foot approach, the government has no concept that that's what they're making people do.
Yeah. And so, there's all kinds of people that are calling that woman selfish because she's not willing to, you're not going to do your part for coronavirus and you're not patriotic. I've seen, horrible
they are
shit.
Just as fucking selfish. They're leading to just as many deaths of people. There's 1 in 5 kids in the country right now starving.
Yeah.
1 in 5.
In America.
Yeah.
In America.
1 in 5 kids starving right now.
Well, and that's why the school lunches thing was such a big deal. That's why when this all kicked off and school got closed, they're like, hold the fuck on. There's hundreds of thousands of kids in America. Maybe that, whatever the number is, way too many kids in America that their only consistent meal is the lunch they get from school. We can't leave those kids without a consistent meal because this is all they have and we have to close the schools down.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure every school in the area, if not 90% of them, has a lunch program where if you do not have food, if you are especially if you're a kid, I was getting stuck between especially and specifically, if you're a kid, you can go there and get a lunch between 12 and 2 or some shit. You get a sack fucking lunch and you're on your way, and that's backwards, that's where we're at.
There's that glass window effect.
Right.
You don't realize how many of these systems we have set up to just make it so that we don't know it's a thing.
Right.
If it's running smooth enough to not cause a ton of problems, nobody knows it exists until you pull it out from underneath people.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of that from all these people that are losing their jobs and having to make real hard decisions, even with their Trump money coming in and even with the CARES Act money in. That's barely enough money to pay for your mortgage or rent and your utility bills. Even if they're putting utility bills off.
So let me throw it to you like this, because I've seen a lot of people, especially my friends, and I don't necessarily blame them for this view, right? But I've seen a lot of people arguing on either side about, people just sitting at home collecting unemployment, bitching about not having a job, but they're getting more money than I am and blah, blah, blah. And then also people who are like, you're bitching about have to work when Morgan, is going 8 weeks without getting any money. And I'm sitting at home without a job, can't work, and I have to wait for this. And I understand both of those points of views from people sitting in either position, there's like so many people that sit in between.
So many.
And just to use myself as an example, right? Not to fucking always talk about myself or whatever, but like a lot of the money that I'm missing is in overtime. Right?
Yeah.
So it's time and a half money that doesn't count towards unemployment, because you can claim like partial unemployment if you're missing 20 hours. You can get that, and your company pays part, and then unemployment pays part, and you can like make up those hours.
One of the benefits to having a mom that works in that system is a lot more, I think, than most people do.
A lot of shit, right? And so, but there's like X amount of hours you have to be missing before you can apply for that. I'm only actually missing 4 hours a week because the other 10 is overtime. So that 10 doesn't count, right? Yeah. So
but it counts for your wallet at the end of the day.
Counts for my wallet, especially because it's time and a half, So I also, if I were to try and adhere to these, standards that these people are putting out on the internet. Well, why don't you fucking go and look for a job if you're not making enough money, right? With the amount of money not that I make an absurd amount of money, but the money that I make now, any job that I could go and get will be a pay cut. I will not be making what I'm making now. If I go and get a job, whether it's at a grocery store, any place that's still open will not pay me what I'm making now at my job.
And that's assuming you carry over the same benefit package.
So I'm missing 14. Well, even if I keep my job and just get another job to make up for that extra 14 hours that I'm not getting, it's closer to 20 hours of regular pay because of the time and a half. So if I have 20 hours that I have to make up of what I'm making now, and I go somewhere else and I'm making $5 less an hour, just for example, that's at least, 5-10 more hours a week I have to make just to make the same amount with that other job. I work 50 hours a week because that's the most that I can work to make the money I need and also spend a decent amount of time with my family. Mm-hmm. So if I have to work an extra 15 hours a week just to make up for what I was missing before because of coronavirus, it does not benefit me in any way to go and get a second job to make up for what I'm missing just because of what's going on. That doesn't...
No.
And I'm not the only person in the country who's in that position, where it literally doesn't make sense for me to go and get a second job to make up for what I'm missing because of this time. Mm-hmm. I'm not a lazy piece of shit because I'm missing out on money and I don't want to go and get another job. It's because I don't have an extra 30 hours a week to fucking make up for what I'm missing. You know what I'm saying? And that gets these people in these weird middle positions, where if Chad wasn't lucky enough to see an increase in his work, if people were scared for him to show up at their houses so he saw less work, the fuck is he going to do? Yep. That's the same reason they added $600 unemployment, is because no one knows how to quantify how much money he makes every week so they can decide how much money to give him. So they just add $600 to it. We're just going to give you the base rate plus $600. Fuck it all. We'll figure it out on the back end. It's like, this is not a unique situation. These are the people that are being forgotten. The very small business owners, not the 40 people, because I'm sure that Tim and Dan have even had to be like, okay, let's crunch some numbers, figure out what we're doing here, but if you have fucking 3 employees, what the fuck are you supposed to do? You cannot just sit on your ass. It doesn't always make sense to take a loan from the government, even if it turns into a grant. It doesn't always make sense to do that, you know?
Because unless you know what the end point is, you have no idea how to structure your business to survive into that point. Yeah. And if there is no endpoint, you don't dive into that and just string everything along and just put it further and further down the road when by the time you actually have to make the call to close the doors for good, you're 3 months behind now.
You're in even deeper because you took the loan, but you couldn't make it through even with the loan. And so now you have to close up shop, pay all your debt plus that loan that you took out from the government because you couldn't maintain payroll. So it's not a grant anymore.
Yeah. Because you have no idea what the business landscape is that you're going to try to operate in.
Yeah.
You get that loan as a restaurant and you keep your staff on board 90%, 75%, whatever the requirement was. And now you're doing curbside pickup, which is a fraction, probably a single digit fraction, maybe in the teens of what your normal revenue would be. Your business is still going to fail.
Yeah.
Just because you paid, your lease payment that month on that building, you're not going to make the next one because you're not going to be making enough money with a reduced consumption of whatever product or service you're putting out. It's nonsensical. I'm going to use that word so many times today because we're doing all these things that do not make sense, period. And I just don't understand any of this anymore. We're just going to spend more and more money and just keep pushing it down the road to make it even exponentially worse when we finally do have to deal with it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute, right? Because we kind of alluded to that earlier.
Can I jump out real quick?
Yeah, I fucking guess, right?
I got a small group of splatter.
Yeah. No, so you alluded to that earlier, and it's something that Colin and I have talked about a lot in the last 9 weeks or so. There was questions from people before whether or not money had any value, you know? and we're now at a point where we've added, I think it's $6 trillion in additional debt just over the last 9 weeks with everything that's been pumped in the economy, the extra bills that have been passed. I mean, I'm not an anarcho-capitalist, and I'm having a hard time trying to conceive why I should even consider that money has any value anymore. You know, we have like a dollar jar at our house. We just dump single dollars in there, you know, count them all out the other day, put them in stacks. Like, oh, this is like $115, you know? It's like, that's really weird that this jar, you know, now there was just shit I was just putting in here. Now it's $115, you know? And I was like, this is nonsense. Like, just that holding the jar of paper that I was like, oh, this is $115. I can do this with it. I can buy this with it. I can buy this with it. I was like, this is just bullshit, you know?
There's no physical backing to our dollar.
Yeah.
On top of that, our dollar is mostly based on oil, and oil's negative $40 a barrel right now. So
it's not good.
It's worthless?
Yeah.
So our dollar's worthless?
How do you parse that with being self-employed? You know, you have to work to get money to do something. I'm sure it's hard to equal that out. Where you're like, I don't even have faith in the item that I'm working to get.
I try to invest in physical products.
Just have stuff. Precious metals specifically.
Gold, silver, any of that stuff, because it holds value no matter what happens with the dollar.
Yeah.
You look, if you were in, let's say, Germany in 1948, 49, and you were a German citizen, if you had 1 million Reichmarks or an ounce of gold, what would you choose?
Word. Gold, son.
Reichmark became completely worthless, and it's not even a currency anymore.
The Reichmark?
Yeah.
We're talking about the gold standard.
Yes.
I can tell.
Any standard. I'd take a rock over that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Because right now, I mean, we're just dealing with monopoly money.
Right, and that's kind of what we're talking about.
Which is what cryptocurrency is, to be honest. I love the idea of it, but it has no physical backing.
It has the same problems that the American dollar does. That its value is derived specifically from what someone is willing to pay for it at that time. And
is it really actually the American dollar now, or is it the Federal Reserve now?
I mean,
it's the Federal Reserve now.
Yeah, it is the Federal. That is word. Yeah,
right here, dollar, a United States of America Federal Reserve note in the amount of $1.
And the Federal Reserve is a private bank. It's not a government institution.
Yes.
So private bank controls our entire currency.
It's just our central bank. There's a lot of people, I think, that don't, and we're not economists, so far be it from us to explain how the Federal Reserve works to fucking anybody. But, I mean, the basics of it is that it's the Bank of America. That's where we, not the company, but that's where we borrow our money from so as to have currency to flow through the system for people to trade back and forth for items that are derived on a value of something that we have made up.
You know me, I'm the least government-friendly person in the world.
That I know, for sure.
If someone should be in charge of our government's, our country's money, it should probably be the government and what the value is, not a private bank that's got people from all different nations in the country of the world controlling the value of our dollar.
Well, especially because you can have people like President Trump, prior to coronavirus, is just consistently at odds with the Federal Reserve and the way that Jerome Powell is running it. And even though he placed him there, the president chose Jerome Powell to do this. He's still, as the leader of the country who is taking money from this bank, is just consistently shitting on this guy that is like, listen, dog, I'm just trying to keep the country afloat. Like, I'm just trying to make sure that we don't fucking fall under the weight of our own stupidity here. I mean, we decided to take away the gold standard, and we're like, yeah, no, it's all totally still legit. Like, don't worry about any of that. We're good. Like,
enter modern monetary
Do you know anybody
theory.
who's ever been audited?
Yes.
I don't.
Casey Bowman.
Oh, boy.
Casey Bowman.
That poor man.
Got totally fucked. Yeah. He does coaching for baseball for the high school and for, like I think he did for Bellevue for a little while too. And so, there's a special form you have to fill out for a stipend you're getting from a part-time whatever. Mm-hmm. So Casey filled out the wrong form, I think, for this stipend that he got from the high school. A year later got audited and they're like, oh, you owe us several $1,000s because you didn't fill this out the right way. And he's like, well, I even claimed the money. Like I even told you that I got it, but he filled out the wrong form. So he got audited to shit. So my Uncle Jeff, not to call you out, but he fucked around on his taxes, got audited a couple of years ago. And he's like, shit.
And I'm assuming you guys are aware, but maybe not your listeners, that the Federal Reserve, the private bank who controls our dollar, has never been audited, and they have $7 trillion unaccounted for.
Yeah.
And the IRS is also a private organization who won't audit the Fed. And there's $7 trillion missing.
And we wonder why we have financial problems in our country. It's because, if there's anything, again, just look at it in the government's response to a pandemic. It's
just print more money and throw it at it.
Just print more money and throw it at it. It's this illusion of control and understanding.
Right. It's the same thing we do with the Department of Education, and our education has gone down over the last 40 years.
Before we move on to that, I think that's really important that you say that specifically right now. Part of why I started to ask you about this, I think that it's going to become a more pervasive idea. That I think people are going to start to lose faith in the dollar more than they already have. Because right now, if you think the dollar doesn't mean shit and you tell people that, you're a fucking radical. You're like, oh, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. You fucking buying gold and shit and doing whatever.
We've been saying it for 10 years.
And people have been calling you crazy for 10 years, I'm sure, except for the last fucking 9 weeks. And now we have people that are actually seeing, that same doctor that I keep bringing up admitted 2 weeks ago, she's like, I wasn't even paying attention to politics before this happened. It's like, so you've been completely blind to the operations of the government for the last X amount of years that you've been on the earth. Seems fucking ridiculous to me, And so you have people that are, for the first time, opening their eyes and realizing that this massive number, this debt calculator that you can look up on the internet, oh shit, this number actually means something. We're not just dumping money off. It's supposed to actually mean something, So I think you're going to have more people questioning whether or not that's true, that before just kind of sold it wholeheartedly. I think the only way that you can, as the government, quell those fears, is to tell them, no, we got it. Let us give you checks, We got it so good, we can literally write you a check, and it's going to be for the same amount now, and you can buy the same stuff with it. Nothing's going to be any different. Yeah. We can just write you a check. That's how much we have a handle on this situation. But they, at the same time, took on $3 trillion, $2 trillion in additional debt to get these checks written out.
Yeah, we bought our own
22 trillion?
23, I think, prior to that. Yeah, and so now, like I said, I think it's $5 trillion additional since all this popped off, including everything they've added to PPP, because it's like $500 billion or something like that. Everything they've added to all these programs, I think we've added $5 trillion over the last 9 weeks. So we're sitting at close to $30 trillion now of national debt, At what point are we like, this is made up? This doesn't exist anymore. How long can you keep the general people's faith in that number? I don't know. And I don't want to keep harping, but it's important. These are not radical ideas that we're spouting out. You and I and your brother are fairly reasonable people. We lead normal lives. We have regular jobs and we pay bills and do shit. We're not fucking crazy white nationalists talking about globalization and the fucking, reptilian elite and shit. We're telling you that we're existing in a time where the government I've
never been to a protest in my life.
Yeah.
Know what I'm saying? So the shit all happened in Olympia. Chad didn't even go, So we're not radical fucking people, when it comes down to it, And I think that coronavirus has exposed that this type of thinking is not radicalized.
Yeah.
We're genuinely asking.
The silent majority is starting to voice up a little bit.
Genuinely asking, how long are you as people going to continue to, how long is this going to still work for you? Because I pride myself on being a pretty reasonable guy. And I'm really questioning how long I should have a regular job. Why do I not benefit more from quitting my job and cutting down a fuckload of trees in the middle of the woods somewhere and building a house and just living there instead and not fucking talking to anyone in the government, you know? Finding a way to buy some solar panels on the DL and fucking dig a well and like, at what point, why do I not benefit more from that than what I'm doing now? You know, we're talking about a society that just teeters on that web of red tape that you were talking about. It's on the edge of collapsing because of the first sign of an empty shelf, people are freaking the fuck out. You know, even if it's toilet paper, it's not even food, it's toilet paper. People are freaking the fuck out. Yeah. They're lining up outside of gun stores over goddamn toilet paper, you know? I mean, what's it going to be like when something serious happens? Like, what's it really going to look like? You know, that movie Contagion. You know, the one thing I think that was different between that and this, in Contagion, there was insane fucking looting, and it's because so many more people were dying. There's insane looting. You know, that even the first sight of something being limited, people just started freaking the fuck out, and they started tearing through stores, breaking windows, breaking into banks to steal money and shit. You tell me, you know, like I said, I pride myself on being a reasonable guy. Why at this point do I not benefit more from completely separating from this, interacting socially with everyone that I love and still maintaining relationships, but separating completely from organized society? Like, why do I not benefit more from that now than I did before and being as completely self-sustainable as possible? It's one of the things I wrote down. What did I learn? Live on a farm. That's what you should do. That's the best way to survive. Whatever the fuck happens, live on a farm by yourself with your family. Stay away from everyone else that you don't actually like. Live by yourself.
That's how it used to be.
Not only benefit, but is it healthier to
you'll thrive that way, dude?
All day long and try to make money to buy this shit? Or is it healthier just to survive?
Make it yourself.
To work all day to make it yourself.
Yeah. Raise cows, raise chickens, raise all that stuff, grow a garden. Survive.
I got a great book in there called Backyard Homestead.
If it's just you and your family, you don't need that much shit. No. You know, like if you're not trying to profit off of agriculture, you don't need that much shit. No. You know, family of four does not consume as much as you would think if you're living a subsistence lifestyle. You know, if like not that you're limiting yourself.
I think I found even without hunting, it takes maybe like 3 acres max.
Yeah, it ain't shit. Yeah. I mean, and even just the amount of animals that you have to have. You know, you do like 3 cows on hand at one time. How fucking long is one cow going to feed a family of 4? You know, if you can efficiently store all of that meat, that shit will feed you for a long time. 4 people. Oh yeah. So I know, you know, you don't need 20 cows roaming on your property and 90 chickens and shit. I mean, you just need a couple.
Here in about 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you how many you need and how much space you need.
Yeah, so it's just...
I got a dope book that you're going to like.
Yeah, so I'm just concerned at how long that charade is going to be able to be held up, you know?
I don't understand what's holding it up now.
Control over the monetary system. I don't know.
With the Fed buying another $2 trillion in our own bonds from ourselves so that we could take out the first stimulus package
keep
bill,
the dollar where it's at.
Yeah. How do you not have inflation creep up behind that at some point? And now we're going to
lower interest.
And now the House passed last night to, according to, what was it, USA Today, passed 208 to 199, if I remember, in the House. The second stimulus bill, $3 trillion.
And it's important to note that it's not going to come out of the Senate looking like that, but it's also, I wouldn't imagine, is going to be half the cost that it was before, you know? It's going to be, I'm going to say close to, if not more than what the last one was. Yeah. I don't see it being any less than $2 trillion. It's going to go to completely different shit, you know? Yep. There's way more places struggling now that weren't struggling before.
Oh, yeah?
That are going to need money, you know?
Yep.
There are a lot of people that through these 4 phases aren't going to be able to work until the last phase, you know, and they're going to need that money that's being talked about. And these are just ideas of what's being passed, but, you know, I mean, like, I've heard as much as back pay for every essential worker that was working during this time, $13 an hour for every hour you worked from, I think, like the middle of January through now, right?
For hazard pay, right?
Up to $10,000. So you could receive a lump sum. I think it said that your employer, they take out a grant and they have up to 2 pay cycles to pay you that. So, I mean, you could potentially receive 2. I like that. I like that idea. I could potentially receive 2 checks for $5,000. That sounds like an excellent idea to me. I've not been, you know, having to go to fucking food banks this whole time, but I've certainly been having to take money out of my own pocket to maintain the living that I was before. I don't live a lavish lifestyle. You know, I don't buy a bunch of shit all the time. We have one income for me, my wife, and my son. we don't live a lavish lifestyle. We don't have enough money to live a lavish lifestyle. So,
but you guys guys do what's right, and you live within your means.
Yeah, and had I not used any sick time or any vacation time over this whole time, I mean, that's thousands of dollars I have missed out on in pay, not for anyone's fault other than the shutdown of the country by the government, you know?
And that's an argument that I hear a lot about, and I'd be interested to hear somebody who's considered themselves more of an ANCAP, their perspective on it is that old argument is that if the government does the equivalent of driving a Ford F-150 through your living room, they're responsible for the cost of the repairs to you in your home, right? And that's what we're looking at here. But they're not, though.
It's been ruled in court already.
So
an armed robber escaping the police, they blew up his house, a random citizen's house, and they said, too bad.
Well,
they didn't repair his house at all.
You could probably make the argument in court that it's the criminal's fault, because if he wasn't doing that, the government or the local government would have never blew up your house or some shit. But in this case, the federal government,
and they admit a certain amount of liability. For example, vaccines. You know, there's a liability fund that has millions of dollars in it. That in the event that like there's like not maybe tens, you know, of kids every year that die or are seriously disabled because they have some type of adverse reaction to the vaccine, there's a compensation fund set out for that, you know? It's like the Vaccine Compensation Fund of America or some shit. It's pretty on the whole.
Should that be on the government, though?
I don't know.
Personal choice to make it.
Well, and that's...
Which is what it should be. A vaccine shouldn't be required. It's a personal fucking choice.
I agree. I feel it, but it also...
I'm not against vaccines.
Well, it's not... I mean, I got to pay through my fucking insurance to get the vaccines for my kids, you know? And if I didn't have the insurance, I'd have to pay out of pocket for it because people own the patents for those vaccines.
It's still intellectual property.
That's the only time I ever thought government interruption was right.
As far as a choice... you know, for like Washington in particular, they're taking away the amount of choices you have to not vaccinate your kids if you want to go to a public school. You know, so you do, and we talked about this on the show that it's like fucking vaccinate your kids because it's better for everybody. But, you know, you also have the choice to not vaccinate your kids and then homeschool them because if you don't want to vaccinate your kids, don't fucking vaccinate your kids. Poultry required... So at the very top, on 1/10 of an acre.
Yeah, and then there's like a quarter acre, half acre.
Yeah,
I mean this really lines out
poultry: 6 chickens, livestock, 2 rabbits. Not enough space to keep large animals, bees, 2 beehives.
The one thing I doubt that takes into account right there is getting water, and unless you have a well, you're gonna need more land for the water.
This is specifically geared toward livestock in a homestead one
on a quarter acre.
Yeah, poultry. And I just ordered the other version, which is all about the growing of produce. And I didn't realize this. The Backyard Homestead has a series of all these books, and they're so good.
As toxic as Reddit is, there's a homestead subreddit that's really good to follow.
Check this: a homestead on a half an acre, 6 layers or 24 broilers or 3 turkeys. Waterfowl, 3 ducks or 6 ducks or 3 geese, livestock, 1 cow with 1 or 2 calves. What the fuck did I say? Pigs, 2 pigs, rabbits, 3 rabbits, 2 beehives. That's pretty legit.
Beehives are really important.
And then that whole book goes into the care, the management, the maintenance of facilities. Yeah.
That's a quarter acre?
Yeah.
It's a half acre.
It's a half acre.
Oh, okay.
This is a quarter acre.
Yeah. And they even have a little layout there for a 1/10 of an acre, which is really cool.
Yeah, and they have an area for vegetables.
Still don't see it well, and that's what throws me off.
That's true. That's true.
Well, and you have these so maybe this is for a well, especially if you're going to have waterfowl, you're going to have, you know,
some sort of wetland.
Maybe they're counting on a pond or some shit.
But what you were talking about before with that adverse reaction to vaccines, that was something when you're in the military, you don't have a choice. When it's flu vaccination
shoot you full of everything.
You just get in line and you take what they tell you to take. And they tell you that you have a 1 in like a 10 million chance of having an adverse reaction to what this is. And again, I'm not a doctor, but my understanding is the most common problem that comes from a vaccine like that is when that little amount of inert virus or whatever it is that comes in contact with your body.
The live virus.
Yeah, your antibodies essentially go haywire and you have what's called a cytokine storm. And so your entire your entire immune system goes 100% full storm to attack this thing, and it makes you incredibly sick. And then you essentially have the AIDS problem where you don't have an immune system to handle anything else.
See, I'm not anti
vaccine.
Just spread it out a little bit more.
Well, so
and there's a lot of different
get
opinions on
something,
that.
fight it, get the next one, fight it.
So let me put it to you like this, right? Because prior to having a child, that was the exact same way. So when we had our kid, I was like Dr. Chow, because that's the name of our pediatrician. Super nice Asian lady, was Jordan's pediatrician, actually. Super awesome
so
woman.
wild.
And it comes time, he's starting to be a couple months old. She's like, all right, vaccine time. I said, okay, so I've been doing some research, and I really think that I want to space out some of these vaccines. How do I get, do this? So she talked to me a long time, probably 10, 15 minutes about studies, the way that it's studied, the way that it's done on this. And all of these vaccines are tested in combination with each other to ensure that the immune response is no different to one of them than it is to all three of them. Mm-hmm. So they work together. They're designed to work together.
So that's why you can have an MMR shot that handles three things at one time.
The immune response from receiving one of these vaccines, because when you're a kid, you're a baby, you don't get 5 at one time. You get the MMR, and then that's I think one of the only combination ones you get is the MMR, and the other ones are all kind of individuals. One of them even now is a liquid that they just drink. It's just in a little, just liquidy drinks, and so that was one of them. And then
flavored like the grape amino.
Yeah, and he didn't care at all about that one. And so I asked a lot about that, and like I said, they're designed to work so the immune response is the same for all of them. So you won't have one that fucks with you any more than the other one does. Mm-hmm. They're all going to respond at the same levels,
and then taking into account that everybody is different.
Now, do they have different routine for immunocompromised babies?
That's a good question.
I would imagine. I did not ask because ours is not, so I did not ask about that. But
my new nephew, he was born with what's it, meconium, where they have feces in their lungs when they're born.
Really.
Mm-hmm. And he's stopped breathing 10 times in a month.
Yeah, so I can't answer for
all
that.
All the vaccines the same way, or is he getting
and I don't know.
A lighter way?
I would imagine, because of how careful they are with infants, that there would be a different procedure for him to receive. So. Yeah, I wouldn't imagine that.
But my girlfriend's in nursing school, and what is prescribed for a baby that was born with that syndrome is a 3-day antibiotic flush, and he never got it from hospital or the doctor.
Yeah.
And that's the first step in the nursing book.
And some doctors just think
I would also show caution, because not everything in a nursing book is exactly what somebody who's 20 years tenured is going to be doing. There's going to be, if you've been doing it for 20 years, Jordan or Dr. Chow was Jordan's pediatrician. Jordan's 25 years old now. It's the only pediatrician she ever had. So
that's a
at
long
this
time
point,
to
the fact that
medicine.
Dr. Chow has been doing that for that amount of time, even if my grandma, who was a kidney nurse for 20 years, said, I learned to do the opposite thing in nursing school, I would say she's been a pediatrician for this amount of time. And not that we've been sitting here for this amount of time. I don't cede all of my choices to people who know more than we, but if this woman is telling me and she sees fucking hundreds of children a year, she's telling me this is the way that it was handled, I don't have a reason to believe otherwise, I try and chalk it up to that expertise, and I don't know anything other than what you've told me about this particular instance, but if that doctor, who chose not to do the bacterial flush decided for whatever reason, based on their experience, it wasn't necessary, then that may or may not have been the right choice. And I don't know that. I'm not telling you that it was.
And even in a more, just to bring it even closer down to the human level, that doctor is going to have a completely different opinion than maybe the other dozen doctors that you go ask next.
There's things that goes back to what I was thinking of is, why is there government regulations on what the doctor's supposed to do when they've been in the field for fucking 30 years? Let them have the freedom of choice and let you choose what you think is the right treatment for your stuff. Sorry, I keep doing it.
It's just with that microphone.
Picks it up on a mic, yeah.
But why don't you have the freedom of choice to what treatment you want?
Yeah, see, that is the other, especially when you're talking about vaccines and stuff. There's that, do you err on the side of civil liberties like you do with, say, a public health crisis like this?
Yeah.
Or,
I think for For some stuff there is, like there's, where they're talking about like compassionate care use, there's a lot of stuff that you can do if you're dying. They're like, fuck it, it's not FDA approved, but give it a shot, because what the fuck else do you have to lose? Same thing for physician assisted suicide, in Oregon and like California. I think it's only like 2 or 3 states. We wouldn't allow you to do that. We wouldn't recommend it as a doctor, but if you're at the point where you're ready to move on, we'll help you move on because that's what you're choosing to do,
And I don't even believe in suicide, but I think that's a perfectly... And I think... If someone wants to do it, they're more than welcome to.
I think there's a lot of times...
But we have a very personal experience with that.
Yes.
Somebody choosing to be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then we just go, well, fuck, I guess we got to deal with that person's choice. And I think
there's a lot of times that those personal choices and civil liberties get swept up and kind of lost in, I am a doctor, I've been doing this for 20 years, I've seen 1,000 people with this same thing, and this is the proper course of treatment to try and do this. And I'm not saying that's right, but I think just because of that person, a lot of doctors are... think by just air of their occupation, or by virtue of their occupation, they're like a little bit cocky. They're very confident, they're literally taking people's lives into their own hands every day. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a sense of cockiness that comes with that. Even if it's humble cockiness, you're still literally controlling life and death in a lot of circumstances. Yep. Whether or not it's the right thing to do, I think the reason in some case might just be that person is like, listen, I've seen it before. This is what we're going to do. This is what we should do. Mm-hmm. And I agree that you should have the choice to do what you want with your personal care. It should be up to you if you want to do chemo. If you don't want to do chemo, if you want to do radiation, I want to do fucking 9 courses of radiation and I have the insurance. So let's fucking do it. As long as it's safe for you to do so, I don't think there should really be something that should hinder you from that,
I don't think it should even have to be safe. It's not illegal to drink bleach in this country.
No, but it's the Hippocratic Oath to first do no harm. So you can't expect a doctor to do something to hurt you because you're choosing that you want to do something, especially if it's physician assisted. And that's why so many people argue against physician assisted suicide. It's the first part is to first do no harm. Yeah, so they're like, it is directly contradictory to my Hippocratic Oath to help you kill yourself because it's doing you harm. Even if you think it's the right thing, it's your personal choice. Mm-hmm. I can't do that as part of my Hippocratic Oath.
I think they can find another doctor.
Oh, yeah, but even then, they've all taken the same Hippocratic Oath, and so
this is true.
Physician-assisted suicide is just one example, but I'm talking about in general. If you're talking about, I should be able to do anything I want with my body, whether or not it's safe. You can, but you can't expect someone whose job it is to not hurt you to help you do that. They can't be in a compromised position to do so. If they want to, that's on them. There's all kinds of doctors that get fucked up and then operate afterwards, and they're like, fuck it. I'm sure it's also part of the Hippocratic Oath to not do it while you're fucked up. But I don't know, So it's I agree with you, but when you need someone else's help to get that thing done, you can't expect them to override that oath they've taken to do that. You can hope that they will, and I'm sure someone will, but you can't expect that from them.
Unless you're somebody that doesn't believe in the sanctity of an oath.
Well, I guess you can. You can expect it. Right? It's your own personal choice to have that expectation, but it's not a necessarily fair expectation that they will adhere to.
I'm just trying to make you defend this point every angle. Doing
my best, man. Doing my best. No.
And I will say, I'd be very interested, just kind of since we're on that topic, of what would happen if you relieved some of the malpractice liability that all doctors have to deal with?
It'd be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
It would. Yeah. I would be very curious to see what kind of different non-standard practices might occur with that, and if we'd all of a sudden find doctors that are way better than other doctors.
So I can give you one example for sure, right? Going back to my grandma was a kidney nurse for like 18 years, I think. Mm-hmm. After she went to medical school or nursing school, whatever the fuck, right? She is trained to help people. She would not stop for a car accident if she saw one because she was so afraid of saving someone who didn't want to be afraid and then losing her license to practice. Mm-hmm. So I think if you take away certain sections, there's people who won't help people in a restaurant who's choking because if that person then decides, you know what? I didn't want to die. Fuck you. They can sue the shit out of you. Mm-hmm. And even if you do make it through, your malpractice insurance, the rates are going to go up so goddamn high, you'll probably have to quit your job,
Not to mention, if you are that person, if you're not if you don't carry a current certification for something like CPR or first aid, they can come after you personally.
Exactly.
Like, we were told that when I was in the Coast Guard. It's like, if you pass a car wreck on the side of the road, that's your decision. But unless you have that current certification, you're playing with fire.
Yeah. So I think you'd see a lot more people getting saved in that way, certainly in ways like that for you, for my grandma, for people who are like, well, fuck it. If I can do something, I'm going to do something, you know? Like, you'd also see less people, not as many, but you would also see some people who are dying because they're like, fuck it, give me this drug. Let me give it a shot, And the doctor's like, well, I don't think that's a good idea, like I'm telling you it probably won't work, but if that's what you're requesting, it may not kill you. It might, if they get really fucked up somehow. Like there was the one guy that, Joe Rogan's talking about, like, claimed he took like Valium, I think, and then it made him gay. And then he like sued that company for fucking just a shitload of money because only when he took this drug did he want to have gay sex. But after that, he didn't, and like won this fucking lawsuit. Like, whose fucking responsibility is that? That like, so there's weird.
I can get real deep into the rabbit hole of that.
Right. So that's so that's why I said less, because there's going to be a lot of really weird, singular, isolated examples of like, this guy likes to fuck dudes when he takes Valium, and when he doesn't, he's totally straight. But there's going to be other people who are like, no, I tried this and it fucking saved my life. And or this dude saved my life because, he like wasn't afraid I was going to sue the dick off of him.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sure. Like that, and there's all kinds of those pills and stuff that people are talking about that they're like compassionate use. We haven't tested it, but if you're going to fucking die and you want to give it a shot, give it a shot, dude.
Oh yeah.
It's weird that you have to be in a life or death circumstance to like truly embrace your medical freedom, but liability, I think, is part of that. The Hippocratic Oath is part of that. There's like so many different, factors that play into that make it very difficult to wade through.
Well, you had expressed interest in talking about Department of Education a little bit. We should probably let's talk about the Department of Education. I'm assuming it's kind of how education in general is being handled during this crisis. Is that kind of?
I don't have like a whole lot. I think it's interesting. It's very interesting that there wasn't. I'm not to like come to the government for not having a contingency plan, but it does seem strange that of all of the different departments of the government, the Department of Education doesn't have some type of plan for how we're going to teach kids if they can't go to school. That seems really weird. Of all the different things, if that's so important, the future of our youth, and the youth are our future, and education of the children, like, everyone's always talking, especially in the Trump organization or in the Trump administration, it's like very important. They're talking about education a lot. Why is there no fucking plan for not even a pandemic, for if there's a fucking earthquake, that's across 2 states and all of those kids can't go to school? Why is there not some type of plan to teach kids if they can't go to school? That seems really weird to me that doesn't exist.
Like actually, I was about to say, on the federal level, I can kind of get it because the state should handle it, but the federal government is the one that handles
the entire everything. Yeah. So it seems weird. So let me even rephrase it, right? With the way the government works specifically in education, if you don't do this, you don't get this money.
Yeah.
Seems weird the federal government didn't say, if you don't have some type of emergency plan for how you're going to run school, offline, then you don't get this money. Like, so why? That seems weird, because I don't think it's up to the federal government as a body to have that plan. But it seems weird that of all the different departments of education, federally and state, no one had a plan for what they were going to do. So all of a sudden, no one's going to learn anything new. We're going to give you packets. We're going to give you tablets if we can. Seniors, just move the fuck on, and then we'll handle it afterwards. Like, hold the fuck on, because
it didn't work that way for you?
No, it fucking did not. I was forced to continue to go to school, and you know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's a very strange double standard that you're going to meet, that you have kids that may or may not have met requirements for graduating, and they're going to move on, For the last 10 years, you've had kids that are shy of half a credit, and they don't get to graduate, But you have kids that, whether or not they want to move on or they want to have their senior year, you still have kids that are missing 3/4 of a year of school, all those credits, and they get to move the fuck on like that.
Because we don't know what
backwards. Because we just don't know, because we didn't ever think about it before. Like, that's then where's all this money going? Like, you know, where's all the made up money going if no one has a plan for anything? That seems weird.
Chad, you look like you have some thoughts on the Department of Education.
Well, is it better to have a Department of Education? Because prior to our Department of Education, I believe we were 3rd or 4th in the world in education. Now I think we're 20 or 30th in the world.
Yeah, I feel like you could probably make some pretty principled arguments against private education.
Wouldn't you rather meet people that learn from other people rather than just one big society all learning the same shit? Wouldn't you want to know? Like, you didn't know about horseshoeing?
Mm-hmm. Not know about horseshoeing.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate on this because I understand some of their reasoning behind it.
I understand the reasoning. I don't agree with it.
The standard, we want to make sure everybody can read, write, understand basic
to this level
arithmetic at this level. So we design our syllabus or whatever to meet all these things. And then next thing you know, standardized testing becomes some weird hybrid way to show you how well that's working on some kind of, graph somewhere along the line so that you can justify numbers and financing and bullshit.
And even then also, let me preface my freedom views with freedom, there is always fallout. As in the ones that don't make it.
Yeah.
The ones that don't make it.
Because
that's good.
Freedom and true liberty, you have the freedom to make mistakes that you can't come back from.
Yeah.
There's no safety net with freedom.
No. That's only your safety net at that point would be like the community and your friends and family.
Yeah.
And
I got a hard time with the standardized thing of education, right? Because there's no shortage of cases of kids that are making it to fucking 10th grade and can barely read.
Well, Colin, for example, I've known him my whole life. A smart guy. He's not a good test taker.
Nope.
Yeah. So why the fuck should a test matter on whether you graduate?
Because it's the only way you can find the statistical numbers. See if what you're trying is working.
I can't divide on paper. I never learned to long divide.
I don't either.
I made it all the way through high school and fucking running start. I don't know how to long divide.
I did at one point.
Tell me how the fuck that happened. That I could never. I always struggled with the standardized testing. There was always one I didn't pass.
Oh yeah.
I know. It just doesn't. Those standards.
2 years of calculus, not no long division.
That they, Rob Gronkowski, fucking tight end of the Patriots, said that before he retired from
tight end of the Pirates now.
Right. Sorry, the Buccaneers now. Yeah. He said that before he retired, he could barely read. Yeah. Like he said that he wouldn't go and read at elementary schools because I was listening to this interview. He said, well, because in kids' books, there's always like 1 or 2 hard words, he said, and I would always struggle with those words. So it was embarrassing. And he's on this fucking podcast on Pardon My Take. He's like, yeah, I can read like 3 whole chapters of a book now, which is awesome. I think that's great. And this is no fault of his own, but how fucking sad is it that a grown-ass man has to be proud that he can read 3 chapters of a fucking book? And how sad is it that he made it through fucking college and can barely goddamn read because he can play football and people are pushing him through? And it's not.
Can he even retain it?
You know what I'm saying? And it's not. I'm not blaming him. It's not his fucking fault. Certainly he could have tried harder, But when you have people telling you, don't worry about it, we'll handle it, you're not gonna try harder. Not when you're fucking 15. Not when you're 16. When you're 20, you're not gonna try harder if no one's making you try harder, except in football.
You know what's fiscally happening during the whole quarantine is don't worry, we can handle it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We got it. We'll figure it out and we'll let you know next week after we've done it.
Yeah.
And it's like you cannot expect that to maintain, and it's for that reason. You're talking about the decline in rankings of education numbers. When you have that many people consistently slipping through the cracks, it goes to shit.
And in a lot of cases, it's done on purpose. Which is weird when you think about it, because an individual that you can identify through the standard public school system, because you're monitored and they track you all the way through the system. It's run by the federal government and the state government.
Yeah.
They identify you as somebody that has a skill that is more valuable than your own education. Go ahead.
Jenna had their baby.
Isaiah
and Jenna had their baby.
Congratulations.
There it is. That's their baby.
Oh, it's so adorable.
It's gone. I don't know what happened.
It disappeared to the Snapchat.
Oh, there it is. There we go.
Oh, that's a cute kid.
A lot of quarantine babies are getting popped out these days.
She's like way too overdue. She's been pregnant for way too long.
I was saying, thank God, a while ago, right?
Thank God.
That's good.
Congratulations, Isaiah. You're going to have a few weeks off. It's a boy. Yeah, it's a boy. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Here's another problem I have with the Department of Education.
Yeah, good luck with your kid. Education sucks.
Yeah.
It is. It's also infiltrating homeschool, and if you don't teach what the
syllabus
state says is proper. Now, let's go real hypothetical here, and let's say Hitler took over the country, and you want to homeschool your fucking child. You're not even allowed to teach them what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For all the people that say Trump's Hitler, or any politician's Hitler.
Right, and just to be clear, you're not comparing the United States government to Hitler or the Third Reich. This is just a hypothetical situation. Yeah. Just
a Hitlerian
for everyone's own protection.
Any party
this guy's a fucking Nazi.
And if you want to teach your kids what you want, they can't graduate until you teach them what the government wants you to teach them.
Yeah.
That is true. I mean, and that's the idea of that standardized cross-the-platform thing, is they have these arbitrary thresholds set that don't measure any actual true, intellectual prowess. And as long as you can pass the test and show numbers that are good enough, you're done. They count you as a victory and check, moving on.
Well, and you can come up with a million different examples. Your job is one example, of things that you need to school. But the only thing that I can, as far as homeschooling, for an example, that I could say that you really need when you're an adult, you really need to know how to read and write effectively and efficiently and be able to consume information and be able to express yourself and retain it. You need to know basic math. You need to know how to balance your budget. There's going to be some shit.
I was never building how to balance a budget.
And, no, but I mean, right. So that's so these are things you need to know how to do.
The only reason I was taught that was because I took a business math class. Yeah.
All I learned in public school was social skills, and I didn't learn a whole lot of that shit.
Yep.
And I think that,
which is a real life deficiency that kids are missing out on.
Which unfortunately, homeschool happens a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And so, there's a very minute list of things that I would say as a 25-year-old man that I feel you need to learn from, for lack of a better term, a traditional education, whether it's in school or homeschool or wherever the fuck, that you need to learn as a child. The list, I think, is pretty small, of the things that you need to know. Past that, a lot of stuff you need to know is based off of what you're going to do, I know you don't need to know calculus to be a farrier, at least from what I would fucking imagine.
Not at all.
You don't need to know fucking 400 level algebra or whatever the shit, as a farrier, you don't need that. In my job, I don't need to know how to long divide. I don't need to know calculus. I need to know how to do fractions well, quickly, and efficiently. I learned that when I got this job. I knew how to do fractions basically before. I always struggle with them because it's confusion as shit. I know how to do them efficiently now, and I'm much better at building things now because I'm better at fractions, I'm quicker at measurements, all that stuff, The things I feel that you need to learn grow largely based off of the things you choose to do in your life. And so I think it's really hard to set those standards to apply to everyone that's supposed to learn under them. I used to ask in my 10th grade math class all the time, why am I ever going to need this? And that teacher would always, to her own credit, would creatively try and find a way that, if you choose to have this job, this is what you could use it for, you know? Ask a 15-year-old, well, I'm never going to be that, so I don't need to fucking learn this, But that's a shitty, maybe a simplistic way of thinking, but I think a lot of ways is largely true. If you're not going to do that thing, that's not a necessary skill for you to have. And I can see to the argument that, you need to learn all that stuff so you can choose to do whatever you want, because I'm 25 years old and I don't know now what I want to do, so I see that it gives you a broader array of options, but I don't know.
Yeah, not to get a little Mike Rowe here, but when I was in high school, if you asked that question, the teacher said, you need it for college. Yeah. What if you don't fucking need college?
Right.
Well, yeah, the push for college is a whole nother conversation altogether.
I didn't need college.
No,
college
I didn't either.
Luckily led me to working a fucking ranch.
As it turns out, the only college level math I needed to know was advanced geometry and trig, and
I bet you can learn that with a couple months on Google.
I bet they learn that in high school now.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure that's not to simplify your job, but I'm sure that you can take those classes in a public high school now.
And I will say, I went through geometry and stuff like that. I learned the Pythagorean theorem and all these different things. I just never truly understood why the hell I would ever need that.
Yeah.
And now it's oh no, I see it in the numbers, and then I go out and I make it happen in the real world. And then combining those two different worlds, all of a sudden it just it just made sense.
Yeah.
But without having that real world experience part of it to know how it's actually going to be applied, I would have never, ever wanted to learn trig. Why?
Yeah.
Just so I can figure out inner angles and, most people won't need it, but I ended up needing it. And luckily enough, I just had and I think maybe that might be part of why we have this standard, erroneous as it is or not, of having a fundamental understanding of how the basics of mathematics works, that you can build off that in the future if you were to need to know that.
Yeah.
A foundational spot off of which you can either leave it there or you can build it up in any direction you need to as your life moves forward and develops. Maybe. I don't know. But again, how do you implement that into a state-run program? Probably pretty impossible.
Well, I think that if things were less standardized, it would also be easier for people to figure out what they wanted to do. If you were exposed to more stuff, if you had career days that were more hands-on, if you had like 4 people's parents come in once a month, and all day we're going to spend a quarter of the day we're going to do this, a quarter of the day we're going to do this, a quarter of the day we're going to do this, a quarter of the day we're going to fucking hammer out, horseshoes and shit. You're going to get a pretty good idea by the time you're 18 of like, I really enjoy doing this. Like, I really want to do this, and I don't. We end up with a lot of
conversation we had about like the alternative schools and trade schools.
Well, and those kids tend to make more money too.
Yeah. Even with college, you have so many kids that are graduating college with just general majors in communications and whatnot because even with the extra 4 years, they don't have exposure to anything other than school. So they don't have any fucking idea what a practical application of this career is going to be. So they don't know if they want to do it, but kids like me, like I said, 25 years old, I don't know what I want to do. And we talk, maybe
I'm 32 and I still don't know what I
this is a good transition.
I kind of do. I want to do this, obviously, but
right. But it's like if this was not an option, like a traditional career, I have a good job now that I could work at for the rest of my life, and this is kind of a Corona education crossover, we're talking about it this week, and I started to, like, you can probably help out with this too. I was starting to look at different careers, not because I'm unhappy with my job, but just as to try and like figure out what I want to do, and for like a couple of months, I was like, I'm pretty sure that I want to be a police officer. Like, I'm feel very certain. This is like what I want to do. I feel very, and part of it was like, I'd like to do it to like just improve the overall image, have a dude that like believes in reasonable shit and is not a fucking asshole,
That's why my buddy's leaving Seattle PD.
And so when all this Corona shit popped off, right, I had like ride along scheduled and then this happened. I was like, well, I guess I have to wait for these, and so over this time, we've seen like the protests, we've seen like stuff like that happen. I have arrived at like a very serious, like moral, like fork in the road, of where I'm like, I don't know that I could sign on for a career that something like this is going to happen and I'm expected to show up to help fend off, contain these people that are expressing their anger, and I'm far be it from me to fucking control anyone or stop anyone from.
But see, that's the type of officer we need is the one that follows that people have their liberties and freedoms, and you'll let them do that. That's what the police we need.
Well, that's the systemic problem.
And I agree with that. I agree with that. But you also see people like the guy in Seattle that stood up for what he believed in and got fucking fired afterwards, know?
It's a systemic problem to the core.
And so that's kind of where I find myself, where I still feel very strongly attracted to that. That still does feel like something I'm very interested in, something I think I could do well at, But I also am like, should I choose a career where if shit pops off and the fucking book happens, right? And the police force is expected to try and defend. I'm not gonna, fuck that. I'm gonna be the first guy that says, no, I've got guys that I'm fucking packed up with. That I'm not staying here with you guys to stop the looters. Like, I'm fucking going, Like, is that, I don't know, because I'm not a cop, so I can't postulate, but all I can do is postulate. But like, I also don't want to sign into something that's like a brotherhood, of police officers for me to then be like, peace out, guys. I'm not in with this shit. I got other moral things that I'm already signed on to that are above this, So I'm concerned, I think, about making sure that I have my loyalties lying in the right place.
Yeah.
You know,
He'd make an even better fish and wildlife officer.
I'm
right? There you go.
very concerned about that, you know?
And that's the problem.
I don't know how to effectively apply that to like a career going forward.
Well, like you said earlier, we need more police officers that have that attitude, right?
Yep.
But it's the same problem when we're talking about politicians.
Kitsap County Sheriff, when Inslee said he was going to enforce this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Kitsap County Sheriff said he doesn't want to do it, but he's going to. Because
it's our job.
Said so.
Right.
It's like, no, you don't want to, you don't do it.
And that's part of when I started thinking about that. If I'm a sheriff's deputy, you know, and he's like, no, like it's, you know, I don't like it either, but it's our job. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what do you mean it's our job? Like, it's our job to fucking protect people and defend freedoms.
But it's not anymore, according to court rulings.
You know what I'm saying?
And Supreme Court ruled 3 times that police have no...
Yeah.
They have no freedom.
No moral or legal obligation to protect or serve citizens.
Mm-mm. They have to just enforce the law as it is written.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the problem.
You know, and I would not take on and so I'm not saying I've like completely given up on it, you know, but I'm just struggling with this fucking...
Well, because when you weigh the odds, right, if you as somebody who wants to go in and essentially be the guy that's going to make the changes, right, you're going to be the good cop. You're going to be the good politician. The actual odds of you swaying the way that system has been structured through regulation and law over decades, if not hundreds of years, is incredibly small. So you walk into that.
Get fired every fucking year.
You really just got to work with the people.
Yeah.
You have to just do your job the way you think it should be done, and then kind of deal with
and then run the risk of getting canned.
Yeah,
because at some point you probably will, or at some point your party's not going to back you during a election, and you're not going to fit in anymore. You can't. The people that should get into the system don't get into the system because the system is so corrupted.
But at least you did the right thing. If you get fired, you know, for having done that, like at least you did the right thing.
And
like,
then how are you supposed to plan your life that way? You know what I mean? When at the end of the day, you still need the dollars.
That's where I'm at. You know, I think that, and I feel largely the same about this, you know, like when we were talking about going to Seattle instead of doing like the live broadcast, you know, if I didn't have a wife and kids, like I would be way less reserved about like, oh, you know, what am I going to do in the future? Like if it's just my future that I'm controlling, way more apt to be like, fuck it. Let's see what happens. You know, let's go for it because it's what feels right now and we'll see what happens. But like, at a point now, I have a wife. I have a child that I have to consider, you know, that like...
in every decision that you make.
That I have to consider, you know, when we were talking about going, we're like, well, if we go to Seattle, like, we potentially could get arrested just for, like, being out, you know? Do I think it's that big of a deal to really be arrested? No. But I also have to work a job, and my family can't go without me being paid. And if I don't know how long I'm going to be in jail, I can't really sign up to be arrested because they won't be able to pay the bills, you know? Yep. So it's not like... I'm fucking, you know, afraid to get jailed. I'm not afraid to get fired or lose something for something I believe in, you know, but there's like things bigger than just me at play here, you know,
realistic fallout to every
which
choice and decision that you make.
Exactly. Which call those things into like, it begs further consideration, deeper consideration, you know, than I would have to give if it was just my life that was at
absolutely.
play.
And that's part of getting older.
Yeah, and it's really also, it's a, you know, like a societal thing like you were talking about, or like a system thing, you know, that I also like, there are people to benefit from better police officers within the system. You know, there are fucking thousands of people that benefit from a better police officer in the system that would not beat the shit out of a 15-year-old black kid because he thinks he has a gun, you know, or that wouldn't do this, or any of the number of shitty things we see terrible police officers doing on a near daily basis.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
totally over for some Instagram, bullshit. Wonderful police officer. All he does is community involvement.
Yeah.
That's all he does.
Yeah.
And we need 100,000 more just like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the odds of that happening are not something that I would want to bet money on.
They're not great.
Which is...
Maybe that is still the right thing to do.
If you want, you'd get a lot of money.
Welcome to crushing morosity of life.
They make, you know, a regular police officer makes pretty decent money, too.
Out here.
Seattle PD makes a lot of money.
Yeah, out here.
Not a bad life.
I mean, I tell the story all the
PD's
time.
hard police department to work for, man. There's a lot of police brutality coming to that shit. That's a hard reputation to carry around.
My buddy's leaving because he tends to arrest the same guy 7 days a week.
Yeah,
and prosecuted.
I commend every good police officer coming out of Seattle because there's a lot of pieces of shit that have beat down and fucking killed people that don't deserve it. And so any good police officer in Seattle deserves all the commendations in the world because there are some metro police departments in particular that are so difficult to work for. That is one of them. I remember just when I was in like junior high and high school, you know, when body cams started to get big, just the string of police brutality coming out of Seattle PD, that you're just like, how are any of these guys even fucking police officers, you know? I know.
And that's been, how long had that been happening before we got body cams on?
And even worse, because they at least knew they were on camera then. Oh, dude, horrible.
Yeah, weird.
Horrible. We saw like 2 years ago, you know, a series of ones coming out of Baltimore. People planting drugs and shit, and they're seeing on their own body cams. And they investigate, they find that dude's done it fucking hundreds of times, you know? How many people do you got to release from jail because this guy fucked him over? You know, pretty much everyone he's ever arrested. Like, shit, dude.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Duncan Lemp. That poor guy.
Oh, good God.
Duncan Lemp.
Duncan Lemp was murdered by the police through
Well, his pregnant girlfriend was shot.
Yeah. They shot him through, like, the window or the walls of his house.
4 a.m. on a no-knock raid. 19 years old, because he trained with the militia, which is not illegal.
Yeah.
And he had a red flag law called on him.
Yeah. He had a prior, I think, and, like...
Is that the day that we kind of went heavy on militia talk?
Yes.
But not just that. People going to the protest to get released video footage. This guy was driving to go protest and to get video footage from the body cams released. They threw a fucking flashbang in his car and arrested him for going to the fucking protest. Those aren't good cops.
We started talking about it because the two guys that defended the salon in Texas said their names were Duncan Lemp. That is why. Is because they were outside, armed, outside of the...
That's right.
And so when they were asked by the reporters, what are you guys' names? They both said our names are Duncan Lemp. And so I said, Colin... I know about this already.
You see all those names that are like, if you want to read some history, look up this Operation Mockingbird. It's about how they released robins into the country. No, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. So I think that
we're sitting about 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that we've done a pretty good job. Joe Biden escapes us again.
Yet
That's
again.
all right.
He's elusive, just like...
Unlike the girls that could escape.
Oh, shit. Well, I think that to try and just kind of boil down our conversation today, first of all, Chad, I want to thank you for being here. I hope you had a good time. I think that we... benevolently allowed you to express yourself a fair amount. I'm just kidding. I think that we did a good job about,
benevolent dictatorship's probably really where the government should go.
I think that we had a pretty good balance here today. It was good to learn a little bit more about you, get to know you a little bit better. I think that kind of the crux of what we talked about today is kind of how we ended our pre-show. You should just stay vigilant and think critically and think logically and be sure of what your rights are. And I think, not to speak for either of you, but I think that other than like work and, you were in that small quarantine to see the baby, I think largely our lives are not that much different now than they were prior. There's some social stuff when you're going places, but, and I personally would attribute that to, we all, I think, feel very confident and firm in our freedoms. We know what our rights are. We know what our freedoms are. We're not seeing articles being posted anonymously on Facebook and being scared that people are going to come to our homes and take our children from us. Not that either of you have kids, but we know what's going on here as far as us and it's just our rights. We are aware of what we have the power to control. And I think that that's helped us be not scared shitless, like so many other people that are fear buying toilet paper and fear buying fucking whatnot. It made it so that you can only buy 2 boxes of ammo at a store. Because that's another thing that I learned. Just have ammo. Don't have to buy it then. Have it. Stupid. That's what I get. Now I know. I'm going to wait 2 weeks or 2 months. Everyone's going to forget and we're all going to be able to buy it up in fucking mass on the cheap again. Yeah. But what you got?
I just want to interrupt with this.
Yes.
So I've thought about buying, ammo, body armor, gold, silver for years beforehand. I'm like, what's the point right now? I can always do it later.
Yes.
It's never too early to do it.
Yeah.
Never too early.
So when you have the money, it's like a prioritization of what you think is most important.
When you need it, it's too late.
Yeah, and I would rather, when all this shit pops off, like it's the last 2 weeks, I've been looking at fucking plate carriers.
Yeah.
When I first met you,
I'm ordering
you
plates tonight.
ever imagine that I would say I've been really looking at fucking buying plate carriers and body armor? Like,
No.
I'm ordering plates tonight. I've thought about doing it for 5 years. The lead time is 4 to 6 weeks. What if shit pops off next week?
Yep.
Then I don't have it.
Yeah. I mean,
Never too early.
To add my own 2 cents to our little closing.
Also, great weight vest.
Great weight vest. Yeah. Good for working out.
Good workout.
Just throw some plates in and do your daily workout.
Steel plates are heavy, bro.
No, thank you. I don't want to be hauling around all that stuff. But, and you've done a great job over all your series of Facebook and Instagram lives and stuff like that. And, yesterday's, I think it was when you were going on about that, what you're just talking about, think critically, right? And my kind of go-to analogy is that if you're reading an article, the first article that you've come up and you read the headline and you actually go through and you read the article, which is a step more than most people do. If you have your decision in your mind made up about how you feel about whatever situation that article is describing, you're doing something wrong. Yeah. Because you need to understand that no matter what you're reading, it's coming through someone else's filter. And you need to read more than one article. Read 3 to 5 articles. Read as many articles as you can about the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Take time to think about that. And then come to your own decision. Listen to other people's opinions on those things.
Ask other people about it, yeah.
Talk about it. Have discussions about it. Don't read articles. Make assumptions. Jump to conclusions. Slow down. Think critically. There is so much more info now related to the virus and just how, say, like the CDC collects statistics on deaths and all these different things that we would like to assume all the numbers that we get are correct, but that data is gathered in a specific way that nobody up until this point had really cared to look at. And it's okay to be skeptical these days on anything that you read or you hear or you watch. Do the legwork. Look into something. Ask us to look into it. Chad took a big hit.
We killed Chad.
We killed him.
I just want to throw out one more thing.
Yeah, please.
If someone is afraid of the virus, statistics. 98.9% survivability rate.
Statistics are important. Yeah.
If you're a healthy person, you're fine to work. You're okay.
And just to put it out there, I don't think that you're a pussy to wear a mask, right? Because I was never this whole time, I was not concerned about
I don't do it and I love it.
Health.
Because they care about other people.
So.
It's to stop the spread. That's fine. I love it.
And I only ever wore a mask because Jordan's grandma lives upstairs from us.
Which
we see her regularly.
Risky age bracket.
And that's the only reason. Because I'm not concerned. She's fine. And our babies
we
are
made our mom work
fine,
from home before she had to.
Yeah. And so it's important. Not that you're shitting on anyone by saying that, but just because people on the internet are such fucking assholes. That's true. Yeah, it's like there are people that need to be protected, and that goes with the statistics. There are people who are statistically more likely to die from getting this disease than others. The people who, like you said, are less statistically to die, fucking go to work. You're all right, And take precautions. Be safe. Don't be a fucking idiot. Wash your hands.
Don't be an asshole.
Yeah, but
just be smart about it.
Yeah.
Go about I can't overrule the government or anything, obviously, but
what
do the best to go about your daily life. Whatever makes you comfortable.
Safe. You know what feels right. You know how to not be a gross fucking dirty fucker. And that's what really matters. Just, you said, think logically, think critically, think deeply. Go hard.
Go hard.
Yeah. So let me pull a line here and we can get out of here. Chad, thank you again for being here. This was excellent. This was a great time. First show back in weeks. Good to be back. Happy to be here. Social medias, Salt of the Street on Twitter, alpaca_Donald on Instagram, Colins at Big Bird Offie on both those things. It's like Chad Offenbacher 1 or some shit like that. I don't know.
Really
it's weird. We'll tag him. He'll be in there. You guys
tagged him in the Facebook. So.
Yeah, pictures of horses and horseshoes and stuff. I'm sure you got a knife you guys made in the forge one time. So it's a whole deal. Let's see here. I've stopped deleting these off here, which was a really stupid thing to do.
I think we ran into that same problem once we were on. Yeah, I'm always sunny back in the day.
Just an idiot, but hopefully I didn't use this one. if we lined up every girl you dated in high school, we could rush for 1,000 yards behind them in the NFL.
I mean, humble brag, but that's cool.
That's the best low-key fat joke I've ever heard.
That's a fat joke, Colin.